Please rise for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So before we get into any public input, it was just asked that under reports for the school, we will discuss enrollment and special election costs. So just a minor update to the agenda. So that moves us into public input. All right. So review and acceptance of minutes. I believe I sent them out yesterday. I'm not sure if everybody had a chance to take a look at them or if.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. Motioned and seconded. All those in favor, are there any comments? No? Over here, Nikki. So, all right. All those in favor of approving the minutes of October 3rd, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye. Those who are opposed and those who abstain.
Aye.
All righty. So that moves us into correspondence. It was a quiet week. I said it was a quiet week correspondence-wise. I think we had to report the enrollment reports.
And the Conservation Commission.
And the Conservation Commission sent their list of properties they intended to purchase, or were not intended to purchase, but were on the horizon. Yep. Okay. So, and then that moves us into new business for, I copied Cindy's old ones, and I really think new business goes later, but we can do it now. So I guess if you want to make your comments.
I do.
I will say, as I said, I'd like to keep any comments limited away from personal. So.
Well, it was all.
You know what? This is related to last week. There probably is member input, or is it old? Yeah, let's do under member input. Let's do new business as related to town and whatnot. This way you have more time to talk and we can not use up too much of the gentleman's time who are here to present.
I'll try to make it as quick as possible, but.
All right, no, we'll put under member input so these guys can do their presentation and then we'll give you the floor. All right, so that'll move us into town and budget presentations. And you said you wanted to start with?
Sure. So at the close of the meeting, members of the budget committee asked if we could try to have a representative from all the different budgets here. And it's tough, with some of the volunteer boards and committees. I reached out to them. Planning was not able to be here this evening. They had a conflict. And the Mosquito District Commission was not able to be here. But I do have Steve Calloway here from Cemeteries. And I'd like, because I think his budget's pretty small, I'd like to have him come up.
Absolutely.
And we can talk real quick. And he can go on his way. And then I think we can follow the agenda.
Perfect. As I said, I'll let you leave the numbers because I was wrong more often than I was right last week.
So I have discussed the budget with the cemetery trustees.
Okay.
Mr. Calloway is here to answer any of your technical questions. As you can see, this is account number 4195 if you're looking for it. It's up this year, $3,000, $3,017. And we look at this as an adjustment, something that is just kind of long overdue. We've been kind of seeing some different needs in the cemetery maintenance. And I think this adjustment would set us on a course where we wouldn't really be adjusting anything again for several, three more years, depending on, where the cost of labor is for mowing the grass. But primarily what we're looking for here is mowing and trimming of all three cemeteries, Pinecrest, Hillcrest, and the Church Cemetery. And the contract that we currently have right now it's really kind of driven towards, it's not a fixed contract. It's more on demand. And the cemetery trustees work very closely with the contractor in managing, the work that goes on. So they work together as a team. Obviously in the spring, we all know grass is growing quicker. And in the summertime, they kind of back off. In the fall, it's all really geared towards, we've had a pretty dry fall. So, activity has slowed down. But overall, we, based on the trending that we've seen, we'd like to see this amount set at $7,000 for all 3 cemeteries.
But you have it at 10,000.
Yeah, this is just for the mowing
Oh,
and
just that one
trimming
line?
at
Okay.
$7,000. And then the spring cleanup, again, that's the cemetery program where we used to be able to have the cemetery, the state prisoners come in. They used to help us out with the spring cleanup every year. They did a fantastic job, and that program is just not available. So we are using the contractor. The trustees have tried to reach out to some of the nonprofit groups. They haven't had any luck yet, but we have tried to reach out and say, hey, maybe if you can get some members of your group together and you want to come and clean up some of these cemeteries, we'd give you a donation or something. So they do look at that, but it is kind of tough to. It's a busy time of the year, spring. All the nonprofit groups are out there doing fundraisers or involved in a lot of their annual events. And then the other driver here is $1,500 we're proposing for just general maintenance of the cemetery. So this is road grading. We actually have we did it this year where we had someone come in and they'll grade some of the bad sections of the gravel roads. We have fence repairs that's needed and has been, we've actually just deterred that work for a couple of years, and the tree removal. So we have a lot of tree growth, limbs and trees themselves that we just haven't been able to address. So we're going to try to squeeze in some tree work this year in this current budget. So we'll probably see an over expenditure in this area. But we'd like to, if we could establish a $1,500 annual budget, we think every year we can do a little bit here to accomplish what we need to do. So I don't know, Steve, did I get that?
You
Kinda
got it
right?
very well.
Well, I appreciate you coming because we often don't see too many of the reps. So I appreciate you taking your time to come
Thank
and
you.
visit with us. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to pose, especially while he's here?
So the groundskeeping is one that I remember or recollect from a recent Board of Selectmen meeting, maybe in the past month or month and a half, Selectman Murray, I don't know, where you had talked about, hiring a high school or somebody, in the town to be able to manage the properties, right? Was there any further discussion on that? And second part of the question, right, is there any liability with that then the trustees assume, right, with hiring a student or somebody in town?
No, if the trustees were to go down that path of actually going out and hiring an employee, a summer person, that would be a town employee and be covered through our insurance policies. There was some discussion at the selectman level of the creation of the full-time position in the highway department, where we were looking, one of the things we want to start moving towards is groundskeeping. And we have a lot of groundskeeping going on between recreation, our fire department, the police and town hall,
River access.
and here,
Yeah.
river access. You're hearing that now, and our cemeteries. I think in general this year, we don't want to make any commitments. What you've got in the proposed budget is the hiring of someone around July 1st. So, and that we would slowly start moving in to, and I think the first step really would be some of the smaller recreation facilities. So we're looking like at Corning Field up at the north end, Jeff Lane, and maybe Brickyard. Those are smaller rec fields. We'd like to slowly start maybe moving in that direction.
Sure.
And then maybe, as we, start to demonstrate that we can do this, we start to learn and really understand how much work we're taking on, because this stuff all grows at the same time. Something small like the church cemetery. Maybe we start to take on the
Sure.
church cemetery down at the old fire station. We're going to be down there mowing the fire station anyhow. I don't want to sit here and commit to all that today. Next year, I really would like to have a good discussion about that and really have an agreement with the cemetery trustees and the rec commission, and that we have a plan and we're all in agreement. We've all discussed it, but we have not had a face-to-face discussion, and our budget doesn't propose that we move in that direction in 2020. It starts to move in that direction.
And so what I'm just sharing on the screen here, it's kind of hard for those even in the room, I guess, to see this, but just actuals, right? So some in 2016 for total groundskeeping was $5,800. Some actual in 17 was $5,700. Some in 18 was $8,400. Some, well, I guess it's still, in process here, but we budgeted $7,500, and now there's a big spike. So in this process, is there an opportunity to review, if it's another professional company, to go out to bid and get somebody else for less money?
Well, the mowing is dependent on the weather too, and we've had a very wet spring and summer. So we would normally be mowing not any more than every 2 weeks in July and August, and we've had to mow every week this year.
Yeah.
And that's why we're over budget. And we also have postponed for the last 3 years any tree work in any of the cemeteries. And as a consequence, we've got a number of dead limbs, large dead limbs around Pinecrest and around Hillcrest. We always try to cut back the periphery because anything coming down and damaging those old stones is a fortune to repair. So it's less expensive to go in and try to prevent that from happening.
Okay.
Thank
Does
you.
anybody else have any other questions?
The town actually has been lucky on this because for years and years, it used to all be done by volunteers. Kevin Hodge used to mow Pinecrest Cemetery for free, and I'm not sure who did Hillcrest or the church, but it was always, all this work was always done for free, and we've just recently started to hire people to do it because the others that, they're getting along and they no longer can do it. I mean, it's tough. And it's a very tricky thing to do. So.
And people are demanding more and more attention to the cemeteries. When they buy a lot, they expect to see it mowed. They don't want to see it mowed every 3 weeks, a month. They're not pleased when they see that. And we've increased our price of lots, so.
No, that would have been my next question. Well, if we're seeing an increase in expectation, are we seeing an
And they could
associated
be,
increase in?
that's something to consider. They could be increased more. We've gone to $600, but we're still the least expensive cemetery in this part of the state.
Mm-hmm.
We only sell to Litchfield residents because otherwise we'd have people coming in from everywhere because it's a bargain.
I haven't thought that far ahead, but that's
Act now.
apparently. Excellent. Any other comments or questions?
I'm good.
I think we're set for now. Thank you again. Thank you so much for taking
Well,
the
you're
time to
very
come in.
welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Bye-bye.
I'm going to let you
Okay,
drive the numbers.
So, yeah, the next is Parks and Recreation. Andy Collins is here. And that should be account number 4520. All right, so I'll go through and just kind of hit the highlights here. Wages with the custodian, it's up $71. Electricity is up $800. I think I don't have any reason for that, other than, again, the spreadsheet that I use, which is just, looking at 2 years of actuals and our 12-month run rate, and then kind of looking what I think we're going to come in at. Propane gas, we're down $750, and we are going to have new heating equipment there this year. It's going to be installed late. It's going to happen sometime mid-November. So it's going to be the same type of unit, but it's going to be 20 years newer. So I do hope that we get some efficiency improvements out of it. But it is the same style, which, was without doing major change of the entire ductwork system. We had to get a system that would tie into the way it was originally designed. So also we're piggybacked on the school's propane contract. We got a really good price this year. It's $1.47 a gallon. So it's down 20 cents a gallon from last year about. And once we get a year of heating costs, it's possible, that this, depending on where the price goes, we could see another drop next year. Nothing significant, but it's possible. Building repairs and maintenance is up $1,000. The primary driver here is two things that we need to accomplish in 2020. One, we're going to rely on volunteers to go out and prepare the exterior of Town Hall for painting, and we're going to paint it. And also the rear staircase, the fire exits on the exterior of the building, which is actually used in the fall, winter, and spring. That's the entrance we encourage everyone to use so they don't track mud and snow on a hardwood floor. There's some work that needs to be done on those wooden stairs. So between those, that work and the ongoing maintenance cost of the facilities, that's why you have $1,000 increase. Chemical toilets, we're down $600. This is kind of really getting a good handle, managing it. We've got a really good schedule for 2020. We know which units we're going to be there for 7 months and which ones are going to be there for 8 months and which ones are there for 12 months. We had one at Griffin Field, which we no longer need. So that's really what we've done is established a better schedule and eliminated one. Equipment repair and maintenance. This is stuff that's, as we have there in the description, it's the repair of the snow blower, well pumps, gates, locks, fences. We've had graffiti in the past. We have our security system monitoring service that we have to pay. And so this is where we think we believe that we need an extra $500 in this line. We continue to do a lot of maintenance on various different things. Field maintenance, no increase. We are putting the rec commission is in the process right now of bidding for 1 year the mowing of all of our rec fields. We have a verbal agreement with the rec commission to do a 1 year bid. And that way it sets us up for next year, really Andrew's question. So we're not overcommitting ourselves to 3 years. It's a 1 year commitment. And then we're going to continue discussions about maybe what we can take on next year. And I think you have the specs actually broken out this year so that we can see the cost individually for all fields. So there is a possibility, right?
Well, we're breaking it up between maintenance and mowing.
And mowing, okay. So, but it's a 1 year contract. So those bids are due the 18th of October, and you'll be accepting them, reviewing and accepting at the end of October. So as of right now, the contract we have is a 2 year contract, $50,000 for mowing, and then everything else is on an hourly basis for other work that we do. That's what the $6,000 reflects.
All right, so there's a potential for that number to change depending on what the bid comes in at.
What's that?
There's a potential for this number to be refined once the bids come in.
That $50,000 could increase.
Mhm.
It could decrease.
Right. Right now, it's kind of like a best guess placeholder.
It's going
That's
off
the
what our current.
The 50,000 is the contract right now.
Right.
Yeah. And let's see here, equipment purchase. So an additional $1,000, I believe. Again, we've put some new playground equipment in. The rec commission has done a great job on the basketball court, brand new backstops and hoops. Painted it, and you've done some wooden guardrails, keep the vehicles off. And you've seen where we put new playground equipment in, so they want to continue to do that work. I think you're looking at some ADA playground equipment.
Yes.
So bottom line, it's $96,853 to run your rec department, maintain all of your rec fields in Talent Hall. That's an increase of $2,105.
All right. I'll extend the same thank you to you for coming because I appreciate seeing the people associated with the various departments come in and be here to answer the questions. So thank you for taking the time to come
My
visit.
pleasure.
Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to share while he's here?
Nope, this is great.
I just had a question about the guess it's line 831, the program expenses.
Mhm.
Forgot to mention.
And knowing that, well, there was a note here about something being new. I know the fishing derby, there has been some things in the past and then not for a couple years. Is that, my understanding is that line item is kind of, sometimes those programs run, sometimes they don't.
Well, the fishing derby was with the Conservation Commission. So we're taking it over. They've since not been able to do it. So we're taking that over. And the information we got from them, it was anywhere from $750 to $900 to run the fishing derby. So that's really the biggest increase in that line. Some programs do run. We try and run each. Obviously, they're driven by volunteers. If we don't have volunteers to run it, it's not there. But we want to be able to have the funds there for the materials if we do have the volunteers to run it. Christmas in Litchfield sort of came up last year. It wasn't budgeted for, so we did a lot through fundraising. But we would like to have some seed money for that as well, because we ran a little bit of a deficit last year with it. That was a great event for the town.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to understand that a lot of these events that go on, there's outside money that's being raised. So it's the Rec Commission just provides, like you say, seed money, just small contribution to help fund these.
Maybe I have that look on your face. If you want to say something.
No,
No? All right.
I'm good.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. All right.
Library here.
They raise it. They don't spend it.
That was a good idea. I could put one of those
Spend it.
little things right there. I can get up and move. I don't know.
You're still ambulatory.
Library. It's usually what it makes, right?
Yeah, I just don't know if I want the budget summary or the budget detail. Hello.
Hello.
Please feel free. So we have a bunch of new faces here, so please feel free to introduce yourself so everybody knows who we're talking to.
I'm Vicki Barrick and I'm the library director.
I'm Donna Ferguson. I'm the chairperson of the library.
Well, welcome, Marion, and thank you for coming tonight.
You bet.
Floor is yours.
So we'll just hit the highlight sheet like we have in the past. So I include on the highlight sheet anything that is increased or decreased $100 or more. So starting with payroll, we see an increase of $1,382, which reflects merit increases from this year. And what am I looking at here? Oh, and in the merit increase line item for this year, it shows zero spent, but that's just because the other lines absorb it once they get their increases. So I don't know how better to to lay that out. The trustees have put in $7,360 for the health insurance buyout that we discussed a bit last year. That is for 4 full-time employees. We did survey libraries across the state to see exactly how things were being done. And all the towns that seem to offer the benefit to the town employees, also the libraries were receiving the benefit. So the average amount that was offered was $3,680, which is actually 75% of what the town employees receive. And they would like to implement this over 3 years. So 50% this year, 25 next year, 25 in the third year. Social Security and Medicare obviously go up along with wages. So that is there. We hired a new children's librarian this year. So we see a decrease in salary of $8,375. And the accompanying decrease in Social Security and Medicare from that new wage. Moving to other operating expenses, electricity has gone up $362. That's based on 2018 and current usage. Heating oil, we got a contract rate and we are in the contract. Unlike last year where we got a rate and then we weren't in the contract and fun stuff happened. But So the new rate is $2.19.9, I believe it is. So we have an increase there. Water usage has an increase, and that's based on the 2019 Pennachuck increase that went into effect. In community programs, we have put in $195 for a library pass to the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston. We do offer a number of activity passes at the library. This is the only one that would actually be coming from the budget. The Friends of the Library cover some, private donations cover some, but we did have some of our seniors and just adults with no kids at home that are looking for more adult-oriented things to do, and so they were interested in a museum pass. And this was the most cost-effective compared to the Museum of Arts. The Art Museum, I'm forgetting what it's called now,
Museum
in
of Fine
Boston.
Arts.
That's quite expensive. We're looking at a $162 increase in grounds maintenance. That's just an increase in the contract. Books and media is showing a $300 increase due to a statewide budget increase in the New Hampshire Downloadable Books program, and smaller increases in Mango Languages and Ancestry. Mileage and tolls shows an increase of $230, partly because last year's rate was at the previous year's rate. It didn't get updated in the budget. And also from the addition of monthly town department head meetings that have started. And our children's librarian will be attending regional meetings for children's librarians. And so we're budgeting for 4 or 6 of those. And we have another librarian that will be going to the Young Adult Fall Conference in 2020. And then we see a decrease of $300 in septic tank cleaning, as that's done in odd number of years. It's just done. So those are the highlights. So we're seeing an overall increase of 0.33% or $874.
My only question, if I may, right, is I see the sum here is 265,587,
Mhm.
but yet we budget 265,804, so it's about $200 higher in the actual budget.
Didn't that get corrected?
No.
You know what, I did correct that. I updated the spreadsheet, but I didn't manually change the number.
Okay, so it was corrected. Just didn't come your way, I guess.
Okay.
So it is 26,587.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? So the health insurance buyout, do you intend to try to implement it through your budget, or will this be a warrant article?
We're intending to implement it through the budget.
Okay, because we did have a discussion last year, and we actually removed the health insurance costs as a result of the concern that we would end up with these buyouts, and we felt that the warrant article process was the appropriate way to make such a change. And then I believe a change was made anyway through a memorandum of understanding that we had no idea existed.
Well, that's an old memorandum that's been in place for a number of years.
I appreciate that, and I really feel that that's something that should have been mentioned when we had the discussion of removing the health insurance costs. So that was a bit of a surprise when we were looking through the monthly increases. So my concern is we made a change that we weren't intending to change because we are concerned of the liability that this would put on the town going through this method. It's a big potential increase. And we felt that last year, at least, as I recall, the discussion was we felt that the voters should be the ones to weigh in on that change.
Okay,
Because
I know-
yours was 30 hours, I believe, is full-time, whereas
32, yes.
the town has a different threshold for full-time.
Right.
And the concern was that by allowing full-time benefits to at the library at 32 hours, that opens us up to concerns and contract issues at the town because we're not offering the same benefits to everybody.
Okay.
As I recall, that was the discussion.
I don't recall the discussion being towards a warrant article.
Well, it was definitely removed from the budget
Right.
and it ended up being spent anyway. So a discussion that was had last year was the concern of the exposure. So I was surprised to see this in this budget this year.
Can I just say, I don't understand how you're saying it was spent anyway. We did not spend any money on insurance buyout.
No, but we removed full, we,
You
the
removed insurance.
library made the policy change to offer full insurance benefits to 32 hours. We removed the funding for that. And then it was still spent, and then the town picked it up.
There was no funding for that in the budget.
When
It had been in the previous year,
okay.
I believe. I'd have to look back in the
I
records.
seem to recall a question coming up as to why there was an insurance overspend at the town administrator level, and the answer came back that there was a health insurance change in the library, and that's where I became aware of the memorandum of understanding.
Okay, and that was from an employee whose husband was laid off and needed insurance. And this is something that we have done for years. So if
Okay.
it happens, if we can get it, if we could get it into the budget, if we knew ahead of time, we would do that. But we didn't know ahead of time. And so, yes, the memorandum was invoked, if you'd like to say, because the budget committee did not want to see insurance money put into our budget on a just in case basis.
No, it was you changed your, as I recall.
Not from last year,
As
I'm
I-
talking previously.
As I recall, the conversation was a result of a change in policy at the library that the budget committee did not want to fund. And that is where we ended up removing the money.
32 hours a week has always received health insurance
Okay.
benefits.
So I guess I
It's not a new.
just
it's
so I'm
not a-
crystal clear as to what the health insurance buyout actually is, right? The way I'm interpreting this, right?
Mhm.
Please correct me if I'm wrong. Is that if somebody elects to not have insurance,
Correct.
you are buying them out for otherwise having the insurance cost.
Correct.
Okay.
Which is something afforded to all town employees.
Got it.
And I want to make that clear. We have always had the opportunity to take town insurance. It wasn't a situation of yes and no.
No, my understanding is that we changed the threshold of hours at which they became eligible at the library, which then triggered a concern
Which
of
they
how.
became eligible at a higher percentage,
Okay.
not eligible overall. We were always eligible.
Okay. But this is a new program, the buyout.
Correct.
Okay.
A new program for the library, not for,
Right, and I'm
Other-
going to stand by the same concerns I had last year. I don't believe that putting it through the budget in this way is a transparent discussion with the community. I'm not opposed to it. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's something that needs to be done in full discussion and disclosure of the voters.
okay.
And my concern is that doing it this way does not provide that level of transparency that I personally can consistently advocate for. So whether, how the board feels, that may be their thing, but it's no, to be consistent and the way in which I advocate for transparency, I feel that I need to say that I'm not a fan of this method, so.
Okay, well, depending on what you all
Well,
decide to do.
I am one
later
person,
on,
so-
We'll address that then.
Absolutely. So does anybody else have any other questions or comments relative to this budget?
Can you go over one more time the plan for the implementation of the 50, 25, 25?
Yes, so in the first year, employees would receive 50% of what their annual buyout would be.
Okay.
And then in the next year, we'll add
To
another
phase it in.
25, yeah, to phase it in over 3 years.
And it would cap out at 75%.
It capped out, yes, yeah, correct.
My only remaining question is, when we did the tour
Mhm.
right, several weeks ago at this
Yes.
point, right, we talked about the 3 top of the mind priorities, right? We
Right.
talked about flooring, we talked about security concerns with cameras that I know Mr. Brunel, had some opinions on as well. And we talked about the unit of the HVAC unit being aged.
Right.
I mean, so where does that all fit in this budget in terms of addressing some of your
We're
priorities?
looking at other funding sources for those items. So we have the trust funds for building maintenance.
Mhm.
So that's where a big chunk of that would come from. We also have impact fees to look at. So yeah, we're trying to do it outside of
The
the
day-to-day.
budget.
That I appreciate. That answer I appreciate.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is it that you're not a fan of the buyout because of the full-time status, 40 being opposed to 32, because the library is only opened and they can only work so many hours. They're not able to work 40 hours.
So when we did the change in the pay scale, that went to the voters. This is a similar big change that I feel should go to the voters.
Would something like this go to the voters if it was at the town level as well?
I am consistently advocating for, I am a fan of 50, 100 warrant articles. I say put everything on a warrant article. So you will not see me advocate for not putting it on the warrant article.
I just want a clarification. That's
A change of this magnitude, which has very long-term implications, I absolutely believe school, town, soccer team, put it on a warrant article. So. Any other thoughts? All right, well, thank you very much for your time.
Sure.
Next up.
All right, where would you like to go next, Mr. Brown?
Okay, we'll go to the road agent. Account number 4311. Joining me here is Kevin Brown. Kevin's been newly appointed road agent since July.
Be nice.
Well, again, appreciate your time coming in. It is always helpful to have the answers.
What you do.
I enjoy every second of it. So.
I live in town also, so I appreciate it.
All righty. 311.
All right, so the road agent budget is actually down this year by $4,150. The budget, bottom line proposed is $32,075. The road agent receives an annual stipend of $1,000. That's not changed. It's this has been there for many years. It's a stipend because the road agent doesn't necessarily have to be an employee of the town. It can be anyone that the Board of Selectmen wishes to appoint to perform the duties of road agent. It's just been, since we've gone away from an elected road agent, it has been a combination. The road agent has also performed the duties of the highway manager. So just so you understand why you have a stipend for the road agent. Consulting engineers, we're proposing $20,000 this year. It's broken up into two action items. One is the construction design. So we would have we have some drainage projects that we know that we're going to be working on in 2020. We have an issue on Brook Road that's going to require some design work, and we also have some issues on Robin Ave, which is a very steep section. It's a section of road that wasn't actually the water lines when the St. Gobain project was going in. There's no water line up Robin Ave, and so there's this. You'll be on new pavement, and then you'll find there'll be a section with old pavement, an old guardrail, and you can visually see there's a lot of deterioration to the road there, and it's all just due to age. We don't know what the infrastructure is underneath. We're concerned about the drainage pipes underneath. So we have started some design work, but more is needed. So those are the two things that we'll be doing. And then there's always some little issues that come up. So there's $10,000 earmarked for that. Stormwater management, we are now in 2020 will be our second year into the permit. So this stormwater management has been around since 2003. We have, according to EPA guidelines, because of the area that we're in this urbanized area that's regulated by the EPA, and we basically, under our permit to collect stormwater in the streets and then, outlet that water into brooks and streams and rivers, there are certain requirements that the EPA requires us to fulfill in order to do that. So over the next 6 years, there are different requirements every single year. And it's a lot of work. I just completed the first year, and we relied on an environmental engineering firm to do a lot of the work. This is work that I can't do, Kevin can't do, but we are learning how to assist the engineers to reduce our costs. But again, it's really specialized work. So this number of $10,000 is, you've seen it every year. We've had years where we didn't use it, but I can tell you that it will be used every year over the next 5 to 6 years. Electricity, no change. This would be for the highway facility. Propane gas, actually, we're predicting that it's going to go down $1,150. I know that we installed a new heater there a couple years ago, but just again, looking at the last 2 actual years and our run rates, this is where we're coming up with our projected consumption. So that is really the highlights of why the budget is down $4,150.
Open up for any questions?
Yeah, I mean, so I know you talked about the consulting engineering services and kind of, some of the money that's allocated towards that budget, right? This is an area that's always overfunded. Even if I go back to, 2004 and look forward.
It has been. So this year, you will find that this year there will be very little money left on the table. So what happened was, in years past, kind of same scenario. We were, last year they were carrying $13,000 for engineering. We did make a change. We used to hire an engineering company that would actually prepare our road paving bid specs. And a lot of that was due to the fact that we were doing full reconstruction of the roads. So we needed to have specifications so the contractors could bid on it. A lot of the reconstruction work's done now. And we're, in our paving program, we're either doing an overlay, we're doing a mill where we're just taking an inch of pavement off the top of the surface and we're filling it with new asphalt, or we're doing that 12-inch, 18-inch full depth reclamation. The board has approved for the last 2 years that we go directly to a contractor here in town that gives us a really good price and a high quality service. We're no longer spending $10,000 on preparing bid specs and actually getting no response back except for our local paving company. So that is one reason that we left money on the table for the last couple of years. We stopped doing that work. And 2, we allocated money for the stormwater management, but the permit was never issued. It was a very big political battle in the state of New Hampshire and Massachusetts with the EPA over the requirements of the new permit. And it got hung up for about 5 years. So, but nobody ever knew if the new permit was going to be issued. So every year we carried $10,000, but we didn't spend the money, but we had to allocate it. I think you're going to find now when you see historical spend that you'll see almost all of the 20,000 spent.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right. You here for the next one too? Excellent. What do you got, buddy?
And road maintenance is account number 4312. It's only up $98,000 this year. And really just being driven by,
I think
by a few
up
items. So
to
unless you have any
98,000.
questions.
No big deal.
Let's go slowly because
Yeah,
it's been a
okay.
long week for me.
I told you we should have went last.
Well, the position that the voters said they wanted to add.
So, yeah, so what we
It's
have
really
here,
good.
we've had a lot of changes in the department in the last 12 months.
Mhm.
So where we're currently at, as of January 1st, 2019, the board had a full-time road agent / highway manager. And we had a part-time laborer. They also created a full-time equipment operator, but didn't ask for any money.
All right, so this
We had 2 full-time positions on January 1st, 2019, and 1 part-time. Then we had the resignation of the prior road agent, highway manager. We took Kevin, who was just recently hired as a full-time equipment operator, moved him up to road agent, highway manager, and we took our part-time laborer and moved him to full-time laborer status. So we
need an org chart. So,
what's that?
so I need an org chart. So in
Yeah.
theory, this is funding the additional
So
position that was added last year without funding.
So we're proposing to maintain the full-time road agent, highway manager,
Mhm.
another full-time position, and we're proposing to create another full-time position. In this budget, we're proposing that we start that on July 1st. So there's only 6 months of cost here that's showing. And the reason is that by the time you get out of town meeting and you advertise, we know that we probably won't be hiring someone until right around July. It could go into September. We're also, within almost the same amount of money, we're going to try to have 2 seasonal employees this year. So 2 college kids. You have to be 18 years of age or older to work. For the last couple of years, it's been hit or miss whether or not we had a summer help. But this year, definitely, we want to have 2 seasonal helpers that will primarily just be there, just cutting grass and doing general labor.
So,
Yes, open to the floor.
so we're looking to add a full-time and 2 temporary seasonal.
2 seasonal that, summer help,
20 weeks.
college kids, like $12 an hour, about 18 weeks.
And any thought to, God help me, Carrie, making this a warrant article?
No, there's 2 reasons why we're not proposing this is a warrant article.
You know, I love you for that.
And one is because last year citizens were so concerned about the staffing, the minimum staffing level of this department, that they brought forward a petition warrant article and they came to the voters and asked if it made sense and if they would, support implementing one action item of the MRI report. And that one action item was to add more staffing. And that question was asked, and I, provided the link to the petition that was submitted, the warrant article.
Right.
We had 1,252 residents say yes. They supported that. 409 said no.
So as one of the people who voted yes, I was. But my understanding at the time was it was formally approving the position that was already added to add the funding. I thought that because you added a position prior to this warrant article,
We did.
and that this was just crossing your T's and dotting your I's for that position. You're now proposing to add a position in addition to the position that was already added.
The petition article says to implement one of the recommendations from the 2018 Municipal Resources Incorporated report.
Mhm.
The study recommended more man hours for the Litchfield Highway Department. Currently, the department does not have the proper staffing to provide appropriate safety standards on the job.
Mhm.
That was a question asked to the citizens. They came out and voted and they said, absolutely, yes, we support this. If you turn to the MRI report, what they recommend is that we created 2 full-time positions
Okay.
and that we create 1 part-time custodian position and we create 2 part-time equipment operators. We're proposing to create 1 additional full-time position. Really, so if you look at the position we created last year, we've already accomplished one of the objectives of the MRI report, which was creating 2 full-time positions. If you ask the question, which I don't think, if the question's already been asked, I don't know why you'd ask again, but you do run the risk of if people say no, now you've tied the hands of the selectmen that they can't create that position. No means no.
No, I understand.
And
But-
that's a dangerous position because the selectmen would be giving up their right as an elected official. They have the right to create positions. They have the support of the citizens. We have done the study. And so we're proposing this in our budget.
So did that warrant article though show the cost? No. To the taxpayer that this
It
would
did
end
not.
up? Right, so,
So the operating budget this year does show a cost.
but it doesn't even show the true cost because you're only showing it at a half-time position, right, starting in July. So it shows an increase of, my eyes are really failing me tonight, like $31,000, but it's more like $45,000. So the taxpayer said, oh my God, yeah, we want that. We want to be safe. But they didn't necessarily understand what the impact was to the bottom line.
I don't know. I think voters are smarter than that. When people say, yes, we support more manpower, I think they know that means it's going to cost money, that it doesn't come for free.
So if there is that level of overwhelming support, I don't see I'm not as concerned about putting forth the question to add a second full-time. You already have the one full-time that wasn't in the budget. This is proposing to add one to add after. So when this question was added, you'd already added a position before asking the voters. You absorbed it into your budget. Again, when my understanding was we've already addressed the problem. This is confirming that, you're okay with what we did. It didn't address what we're going to do going forward. So if there is that overwhelming support, then there should be no problem getting authorization for a second full-time with the cost fully laid out. That's my opinion. So yes, the Board of Selectmen has the right to request what they'd like. The taxpayers also have the right to shoot down the budget, and then we'll be in a worse position. So, because as I said to the library, I'm all for asking as many questions as possible, full transparency. And to Jen's point, I don't think that the voters, by that you could say we're adding 5 people because you said I could have more manpower. Why is 1 enough? Why not 4? And where's the limit on that request?
I think that the voters approved this overwhelmingly. I think they knew that there was going to be a cost. And I think the Board of Selectmen are being very conservative and taking very little steps forward in trying to implement the MRI study. And I don't think any of us should sit here this evening and really kid ourselves to think that we can continue to run a highway department with 2.5 positions.
That'd be part of your
Can't do it.
capital
We cannot
plan.
hire folks right now to plow, to commit to plowing our streets. There's just the requirements now to possess a commercial driver's license, the testing that's involved and the licensing requirements on an annual basis and monthly basis. There's just less and less people that are interested in doing that. On top of the fact that we're asking people to do it on a part-time basis during the winter months when it's, they've already worked all summer. And now we're asking them to give up their potential of their Thanksgiving, their Christmas, their New Year's Eve, their school vacation week, February, March.
So this one person is going to
So
solve that problem?
we're in a position right now, we saw it last year, that, we got to start growing. We know there's money in the budget in areas that we can eventually start taking control of some of the stuff that we're doing and contracting out. And we want to roll that into the highway budget. But it's got to start off with manpower and equipment, and it takes time to get there, and we're trying to do it in little steps.
So what I think as a voter, I would like to see is if you're planning to do it in little steps, I would want to know what little steps I'm committing to. In the course of 5 years, what little steps am I going to end up being? What are those little steps eventually going to end me at? Because I don't want incremental here and there and then end up, oh my goodness, I have a huge, massive DPW. How'd that happen? Let's say in 5 years, we want a DPW, and here are the little steps we're going to do to get there. I don't want people to wake up one day and say, what happened? Let's just tell them what's going to happen. Ask for permission before you get there.
If the report is to be implemented and the action plan that was recommended, it recommended creating a Department of Public Works
Mhm.
or General Services, whatever you want to call it. Identifying a person that's going to oversee that entire department.
Mhm.
Cross-training our highway folks with the solid waste folks so that they both can work together. Taking over a lot of the building and grounds responsibilities. And in order to do that, at least what they laid out was that we needed 2 full-time positions, 1 part-time custodian, and 2 part-time equipment operators.
Mhm.
I'm not so sure where we're going to get the 2 part-time equipment operators, but I think they were looking at that we have had really good luck down at solid waste department, hiring and workers down there, and they stay, they're dedicated employees. So I think they saw that when they interviewed the staff down there, they do believe it's possible to have some permanent part-time positions that wouldn't just be coming and going all the time.
So then the addition of these positions rolls into a bigger plan, which potentially has cost savings? If we're taking on potentially more work?
Yeah, I don't know if you'd ever, and I'm not going to sit here and,
Right.
and help myself, but I don't think you're going to save money.
Okay.
But I think you can take this pot of money
Mhm.
and move it over here and maybe use all this money a little bit more efficiently.
Right. And I think, so to me, and I'm not a member of the Board of Selectmen, and they have to sell it however they want, but if I'm looking at that and you want my buy-in, I want to know where I'm going with this. And right now it says we're taking a step towards something, but I don't know what that something I'm moving towards is. What's it going to look like? How does this step get me there? And I don't see the end goal here. I just see I'm taking an incremental step to something. And I think if you want my I need to know where I'm going with this. And I need to know what that's going to cost and what it's going to look like. I think piecemealing it here and there is where people tend to say, you get upset because then all of a sudden this town got huge and they didn't know how it happened and where was their say. But if we're up front and say, this is where we're going, then there's no conversation.
But I disagree with the term piecemeal. I don't see this as a piecemeal. I see this as trying to meet a basic need of the department. I'm not piecemealing anything here. I'm telling you that you need 3 full-time positions at a minimum in the highway department. It takes 2 people. I mean, it takes 3 to just go out on the road and repair something. You got to have someone doing some flagging, and then you have 2 people working, doing something. I mean, at a bare minimum, you need 3. I don't see this as a piecemeal. I see it as a clear and simple safety issue for the department and trying to meet some minimum staffing standards that the petitioners clearly saw that there was a need in this town. And I applaud them because they went out and asked citizens, and those citizens signed it, and they came to the polls and they supported it. And so we're doing nothing more than doing what I think the citizens asked us to do. And I think it's going to be it's a very small step in the right direction.
So just my only challenge is, yes, the taxpayer said, we want this overwhelmingly, but there were no numbers associated. And so when we challenge back to say, give the taxpayer the number, you said, well, then no means no. So to me, it sounds like you're concerned if the taxpayer has the number, they may go, whoa, maybe we don't want this, and then we can't make this happen. That just seems counterintuitive to me.
No, I mean, when we do all of when we talk at deliberative session, we're going to disclose it. We're going to make people aware of what's in this budget. When we put the inserts in the Hudson Litchfield News and on our website, we're going to disclose it. People are going to know that we are creating another full-time position in the highway department. It's not going to be a secret. And
But
it's going to be in the operating budget.
But you're stating that the taxpayer knew it was going to cost money. Sure, did they know how much it was going to cost?
They will now, because it's going to be in the operating budget.
Okay, so we understand your position. I mean, it doesn't preclude us from removing it. So, I mean, it's a decision that the budget committee will have to consider and discuss. I mean, if the budget committee decides to remove it, then you have the right to move forward as a warrant article or to figure out how you'd like to handle it. I mean, I appreciate the request.
Yeah, no, it's.
So, all right, moving on.
So then you'll see that the next items obviously are those cost items. They're part of the existing staffing and adding the new position, again, at 6 months. But at health insurance, $44,000 increase, dental, $1,500.
And that's associated with adding 2 full-time positions.
And just, we also had a change in status. Because we had one employee leave, was at a certain enrollment, and we had another person move up to full-time, that's a different enrollment. So when people change from family, 2-person single, and elect not to take stuff, everything changes when you have staff change. So it's a combination of enrollment changes and the new position.
So that the number that you have for the health insurance right now, it's still a placeholder because we don't know the new rates. So is this what we're currently?
So,
It was 7.4%.
at the start of the meeting, I did want to mention to you, there's been a few things that have occurred. We did receive our health insurance rates, and the rates, I think it's good news. We had a rate increase of 7.4%.
It breaks my heart that that's good news.
That
but
is good news.
But yes.
Bottom line.
It's under 10 and like everybody's excited.
Bottom
It's
line
sad.
impact, right around, it increased everything, right around $36,000. So
So
that
does this-
7.4% equated to about an additional $36,000 to the budget the last time you saw it.
So this,
All those numbers have been populated and updated.
okay, so this
throughout-
number actually
throughout the
reflects
budget.
that increase.
It's a good number.
All right.
Dental went up 3%. It's amazing. Dental insurance is very affordable. I don't know why, but the bottom line is it was a $500 increase to the budget. And just so you know, in the assessing budget, which we review, we're reviewing that tonight.
Yeah.
Um,
No
and
spoilers.
so I'll talk about that one.
Yeah, no spoilers. Go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. So,
Not even 30. It was, less than like 20,000.
of
Budget.
the
Yeah.
health.
Yep.
So you should have
Contracted
put it down. You
services.
look like a hero.
So if we have another
So-
full-time person, why can't they do that plowing? That's going to cost us 13 grand.
So contracted services, we try to provide an example of, 12 storms, 15 hours, 3 trucks at this and that changes every single storm. But we tried our best to say, hey, this is what we think. So we try to budget for 12 storms that are fairly significant events and 6 storms that are less. And it just requires less work and effort. So 90,427. One of the things that's changed this year is that we've contracted out the plowing of the town office, the police station, and the new fire station. We're using the same contractor that the school uses for their facility. We've done a 1-year contract. And I'll tell you, the reason we've done it is because we really need to take with whatever plows and equipment and workers we have, we want them on the roads. We want their primary purpose to be out there on the roads. And the only way we could do that was to contract out the parking lots. We've only done a 1-year contract because we'll be looking at this next year, whether we can do it in-house or if we put it out to bid and try to wrap in some other work along with the parking lots, like the sidewalk and the old fire station, and just see if we can get, see what we get for pricing.
The old fire station.
But for this year, that's what we've done. And the 12,667 reflects the cost. It's a fixed cost that gets us through January to April. Under general supplies is their next increase. That's line number 610. That's up $2,000. And this is being driven really by the fact that obviously we've got a new road agent. They're looking at everything from our basic necessities of just storage and supplies of nuts and bolts and those types of things, and our oils and hand tools and power equipment. It just hasn't been, we need to make an investment in these areas. We don't really have a very well stocked department. So that's what's driving a $2,000 increase. We've been doing our best this year to try to really buy stuff, and we have been. So
So is there a plan for equipment that needs to be purchased or
no, we're
supplies?
talking about basic stuff. I'm talking about grass trimmers, chainsaws.
WD-40, you know,
Just-
engine oil, you know, chains for the saws, just basic stuff, hand tools, wrenches, you know, stuff we just, you guys came down and seen with this shop. It needs attention, you know, rakes, shovels.
gas cans that,
Yeah.
you know, that meet today's safety things. I mean, just a lot of just basic stuff that just needs to be addressed. And, really, Kevin's philosophy is he'd rather have the tools, the parts, the stuff stocked at the garage, and have it delivered, and being able to work with Josh out on the streets and instead of driving around to different places and picking the stuff up. So we're trying to really change the way we purchase stuff, stock stuff, so we can focus more on working and not, going around and buying toilet paper towels and nuts and bolts and WD-40. So
Bring it from home?
As you buy in bulk, you put it in the shelf, and then we can actually pave a road, or mow grass.
As long as you have a proper place to store it.
That's right.
oh yeah.
Those shelves were pretty full.
That becomes an issue too.
I said that those shelves were pretty packed as I recall, or like full of stuff.
Old stuff.
All right, $2,500 uniform. $2,500. This was your initiative.
That was
Kevin.
me.
So one of the things that Kevin really wanted, and I totally get it, that we actually start spending more money on updating all of our traffic control devices, which are cones and the what do you call those horses there? The barricades. Barricades, and also protective gear. So we actually are having shirts, and pants, and vests. They're clearly labeled with the department, so people know who we are. They know they're Litchfield Highway employees. But most importantly, that they have the proper reflection, so when they're out there. And that's something that we've just, that to me is just a minimum standard. So, but it hasn't been in the budget, and that's what's driving that cost. Salt purchases, $5,000. I don't know. This is based on our tonnage, our expectation we already have the contract prices locked in at $49.50 a ton. I don't recall if the $84,100 was just an adjusted amount by the budget committee last year or not. I don't know.
I feel like
I think it had to do with
Possible you may have
tonnage.
adjusted a little bit.
I think we reduced tonnage or something.
You may have. So $89,100 is an estimate of 1,800 tons. And we, I got a link there. What do we got for tonnage? So we have ordered, since I did this spreadsheet, we'll have to update it because we have ordered more salt, getting ready for the fall. But you can see that in 17, we had 1,821 tons, 2018, 1,800 tons, and 19 as of August, we had 1,400 tons. You just put
120,
you added 120.
Yeah.
We go through 100 tons.
80 to 100 ton of stone.
A storm. So between now and December 31st, we're pretty confident we're going to spend another 1,800. We're going to use another 18. We won't use another. We'll use 1,800 tons in 2019.
I'd like to congratulate you on the union price though, because I did think it went down. I just didn't realize how much it went down.
It's we have two contracts at $49.50, and we have another contract that came in today at $57.50.
All right, that one's not that one's not. I'm not going to quick grab
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was the.
Yeah, that much?
Well, that was from
Granite.
Morton. No, Granite State's the 49.
Just don't order from them as much.
Yeah. Well, as long as they have enough.
Yeah.
We signed the contract with a 1,800 ton amount,
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So they'll set aside 1,800 ton for us. We'll keep our fingers crossed we don't go over. I'm hoping it doesn't snow at all.
Dude, I was promised global warming. And I'm just saying every
Okay with
winter, I
Whoa.
said, where's my global warming?
Lots and lots of rain.
So there's only one other item here that's changed. It's a reduction of $300 in the vehicle lease, and that's just driven by us doing the math and the payments. But I just want to point out to you, line item number 730, the highway block grant.
Mhm.
So right now I have $205,704 plugged in there. You heard Representative Ralph Baum talk last week, and that was the first time I started seeing stuff in writing. So, you know, we are guaranteed, forget the amount,
It's like
60,000 or something like
64.
that. Was it 40?
63, there was a number, he gave it to us.
64.
Okay. There was
So-
just two sections, last year and this year.
The check that's going to come in and we're going to receive that check anytime now. We're going to have a public hearing and accept that as unanticipated revenue. And so I fully expect that the board will do that. And I am very hopeful that they will accept it and earmark it towards road improvements. So towards our road paving program. And that we'll encumber those funds to be used in 2020. Now we're also going to get the same check. It's guaranteed in 2020. And so the way to budget for that is to increase this line item by that amount. And then I'll show it as a revenue. So that line item may increase. The next time you see it,
Okay.
will increase, but it'll be offset with
By
a revenue.
$120,000 roughly.
Yeah.
Would it be 120 or 60?
Why not reduce it by 120,000?
Well, because they're guaranteeing two payments. And if you reduce this 2 years from now, you're going to be down if it's 40,000, you're going to be down $40,000. And now we've gone further. We've reduced our
Spike.
paving budget greater than it was 3 years ago.
But then in a couple of years, you put it back to where it should be.
The-
Or
There's
you
going to be
offset
a
it.
tax impact.
The
Well, of
concern would
course.
be.
There's a tax impact now.
Yeah, but I mean,
It would be an artificial suppression of
yeah,
the
you
tax
just,
rate.
I wouldn't recommend doing that. These are one-time grants, and they should be accepted and spent for the purpose that they're earmarked for.
So do we
Because I
have
understand they're coming through and earmarked for infrastructure,
infrastructure specifically for road improvement?
just as infrastructure.
So it could be used for anything.
So if I could do drainage projects, some towns have these small bridge culverts. They have, not just paving. Our biggest priority in this town right now is paving.
Okay.
In terms of infrastructure.
Right, so if it helps you get a little bit ahead, then.
I thought we were pretty much caught up because of all the Pennachuck
Well,
or the PFOA, excuse me, St. Cobain. No,
so-
exactly.
the
You weren't
board,
already-
when we passed the bond article for the fire station, the board, although I'm not sure if you'll ever see a vote, but it was my belief that the consensus of the board at the time was that we were going to remove the $100,000 warrant article question that supplemented this block grant to help the town ease into the fire station bond payment. And that slowly over time, we'd start to bring that money back in little, 50,000, 70, and we'd try to get back to that annual question of, would you like to raise an additional $100,000 towards road paving? So this year, we've not had that discussion at the Board of Selectmen's level. With the news of this grant money, I'd like to think that maybe we can hold off another year. But eventually, the $200,000 block grant money is not going to be a realistic target. You need to be at a minimum $300,000 a year to deal with roads that need improvement work, and then just to keep up on your maintenance. We haven't done crack sealing in this town for years. And we've been working with the Regional Planning Commission. They spent a whole year working with us on doing an assessment of all of our roads. And through their computer modeling, it's kind of complicated, but it's all software driven. They've come up with a calculation that we should be spending $650,000 a year. Now, Kevin and I have looked at the list and we're like, that's just not realistic. But the whole purpose of the plan is it mixes maintenance. So if you've got a road that's 5-6 years old, you crack seal it. That's going to now you don't touch that road again for another 5-6 years. That 5-6 years passed. Now you do a 1-inch overlay. At the same time, you're doing roads where you're doing that mill and fill and you're doing the full depth reclamation. That's what the $650,000 reflects. We are looking at doing the mill and fills and the full depth reclamations, spotting them in areas that we know we need. And, we believe that we're kind of unique here in Litchfield. Our roads are all, the base is sand. We don't have a lot of frost heaves going on in the winter. We don't have a lot of ledge. So our roads in Litchfield last a lot longer than roads around us. We're very, very fortunate. And I think if you travel our roads, you'll see they're in good shape when you compare them to other towns. So I think we're okay with the $200,000 that we had last year, the $200,000 we had this year. The state 1 year in the last 3 years, they gave us an extra $100,000 for roads. Now we're getting these 2 extra payments for roads. We've had some impact fee money that we've used. So we're doing okay, but don't fool yourself to think that 3 years down the road, you're going to need to have $300,000. I'm not sure where it's all coming from. Maybe the impact fee money will be there, and maybe the state will continue to give us these one-time grants.
Okay. Anything else you got, or were there any questions? None?
Signposts and accessories.
Big doings, right?
Big doings.
But this is
surprised actually.
Well,
we did
So
quite a
this
bit.
is one that stuck out to me as being over budget, or at least it looks that way.
so I'd like to just have a brief conversation about what the plan is.
Huh.
So
I
that's,
see the chart.
It's, something, it has a lot to do with, plowing. A lot of signs get taken out plowing. We have a lot of vandalism. We just had some of them Bear Run. It's, they age, stop signs age, the reflectiveness goes away. And, it seems like we're doing, 4 or 5 signs of different signs a week. We did 3 up on Corning yesterday. We were up on Bear Hill, Bear Run the other day, taking care of vandalism. So it's one of those things. Maybe it is a little high this year, but next year, we may be over, because you just never know. There is a new mandate. Some of our signs are the smaller street signs. We have to go to a larger DOT sign. So, there are a bunch that we need to replace in town. The big push right now are the neighborhood watch signs. We just bought some of those. Animal crossing signs. So believe it or not, there are a lot of signs out there, delineated posts that get taken out, snow plowing, truck cars driving over them. So we do a ton of signs, a ton of delineated posts of that nature.
Thank you.
And they're not cheap.
No, they're not cheap.
What are they, like $50 each or something?
Depending upon the size of them, a good stop sign is around $65, and then the poles another $40, and then stainless hardware, and it all adds up.
Just something I noticed.
Well, thank you. Anything else?
No.
All right. Well, thank you on this one. Are you here for another, or is this it?
No, I'm all done.
Well, thank you very much for coming.
thank you.
See you next
Appreciate
year. No, I'm kidding.
I'll see you before then.
I know.
You're back.
Just wave to
Nice and easy.
Wave to when they go by flying.
Hey, always. We do appreciate your efforts on that.
Thank you.
All right, so from here, I'm going to ask John Brunel, our information technology director, to step up and he'll go through his budget, which is $4150.
Lots of interesting things.
There we go. Hello, John. Thank you again. Same thank you to you. And
You're welcome.
appreciate your time coming out here and defending this budget. I'm so,
Going to start in a few minutes.
I know. Well,
We're getting there.
I can talk fast.
It's all right. I'm good.
That was sarcasm.
All right. Floor is yours.
So 4150.20. So line item 341, that's our telephone and data line. That shows an increase of $7,300 and $7,328. This line is made up of about three specific line items. One is our wired and wireless services, which is basically telephone and data. We have three primary vendors: Consolidated, Comcast, and Verizon Wireless. The predominant reason for the increase is driven by usage, but additionally the new fire station and some maintenance that we had to do this year at the town hall, which required us to pull all the lines off the street and go to fiber because our pipes were filling up with water
Oh,
and
nice.
they were failing. So we had several phone failures this year that the only way to resolve was to put a new infrastructure in. So that was part of the cost, which meant we went into a new contract, which provided different services, which had baked in the updated services. So that's the reason for that increase. Also, like I said, it's still driven by usage. So our wireless usage, our Verizon Wireless has gone up. We have a new cruiser in addition to the fleet. That's more data usage. We have a considerable amount more of long distance charges, predominantly due to investigations that are going on. So a lot more long distance calls being made here and there. So that's the reason for that increase.
It doubled. Like,
Huh?
Our usage has doubled.
Yeah, in some cases. Yeah, and like I said, in the consolidated charges, we started moving a lot of our services to consolidated. The fire station gave us an opportunity to improve over here, but we also had to take on the infrastructure costs, yearly infrastructure costs there that was never seen before. The old fire station had 2 phone lines going into it. This fire station has, between health and safety and code requirements, something like 13 phone lines going in there. So, but the one benefit was if one side fails, we fail back and forth. So there is an improvement in service for us to do it that way. In line 342, it shows an increase of $3,225. There's no significant changes there. It's just certain things have gone up. I'll highlight a couple of things. One is our domain services. So the .gov domain, we used to pay $125 a year for that domain. It's now $400 a piece, and we own 2 of them. So that's litchfieldnh.gov, and then the old one, which is litchfield-nh.gov. And they're both being heavily still used. It's very tight to get people to change. So that's why that happened. That actually happened last year, and we absorbed the cost this year. It's in the budget. So that's, and then, like I said, other services, cost has gone up. Moving to equipment maintenance, 630. That shows a decrease of $5,020. Let's not be excited. Predominantly, that decrease was driven by the removal of a maintenance program we had for our file storage. So we have an on-prem storage array that hosts all of our electronic data. That device went into service in 2011. It is just about 9 years old now, and the vendor no longer supports it. So you'll see something down below to try to replace that. That's really the main driver for that decrease. In addition, we have made some investments in capital improvements. We have a life cycle program for all of our gear. Last year, the board was able to help us do some of that work. So a lot of our year-over-year maintenance went into a 5-year program. So we won't see a cost for 5 years of the maintenance programs. But that also means we've made some of that change.
But if we know it's going to be an every 5-year program, shouldn't we then allocate 1/5 of it, and that way it's level funded for over the course?
Well,
of the
this year we get 9 years out of everything we purchase. Now we're into a 5-year program. So, and what I mean by a 5-year program, the equipment may last more than 5 years,
Mhm.
but a lot of the way they do these contract or that these maintenance programs, you get a significant discount by going multi-year.
Mhm.
And we did a 5-year for the cost of 3.5 years. So in the past, when we made investments in the technology, we did a 3-year purchase up front. This year, we were able to get 5 years out of it for the same kind of money. But to your point, yeah, we
do that with assessing, right? We have a 5-year program and we level fund it across the 5 years so we don't spike. Is there a way to look at doing something similar to that here so we can again level fund the impact? I don't want to, I hate to see boom every 5 years you get nailed with a big increase. Whereas if you do a little bit, if it's level funded, then it's.
we created the technical technology fund, which is meant to kind of level that out.
Right.
We haven't had to tap it yet, but that may be coming for other reasons. But we can, I mean, certainly I think we should be doing it. We probably should putting some more funds in those things because a typical 7-year life cycle is anywhere between $70,000 and $100,000 just in the IT infrastructure itself.
Right.
So it's certainly something to
I
think
mean,
about.
because it's not a surprise, it's going to fail. So rather than get.
Did you have to
flopped-
say that?
It could be 20 years from
Monday
now.
for 5 hours for a problem. I don't want to be here again.
I mean, it could be, 10 years from, it's like anything, right? Eventually it's going to die. We know it's going to die. So let's plan for that big expense over a longer period of time so that people don't get hit with $100,000 increase in 1 year. 10% of that over 10 years is a lot more palatable than a huge hit at once.
I miss the two of you together.
I'm not sure I'm ready for it today. It's been a long day.
I've had a long week, so I'm ready to go.
Got 10 cups of coffee and make it warmed up really quick. So moving to, let's see, 740, right?
So before we go there, right, one question on the VMware that I just noticed, right?
Yeah.
We're budgeting $2,500, $2,495 in the budget,
Yes.
but the quote actually has it at around $1,100.
Right, but we've added, so that quote's for the renewal of what's existing,
Okay.
but we also have other ones that are not part of the quote. We just added another instance in there, which is about another $1,000. And I couldn't get in the recorder because we just got the equipment. So that will happen is that's going to expire mid-year. This will expire when it says here in the date. The new ones will expire towards the end of the calendar year. I can't get a quote the next year, so I'm showing it just based on what I know what the cost is going to be.
So put a markup and add it attach it as just so you.
Yeah, I can do that.
Just so that your data ties back. That's one of my pet peeves is when the numbers don't match. But if I have a little note saying why the numbers don't match.
Yeah, and actually the expiration's a little long too. I could probably fix that. Any other questions on that? Nope. Okay. So 740 equipment purchases, just as I've done, and this does represent an increase of $58,700, and I'll go through the reasons for it, what it is, what the makeup is. First line is the 5 computers. So every desktop computer in our facility, whether it's here, the police department, fire department, highway, we have them on basically a 5-year life cycle. And what I do is I just basically rotate out the oldest to the newest every year. We've been doing this program since the start. 5 years. We do 5. We get 5 to 6 computers based on this number. It just depends on what we have to purchase that year. And it's been consistently that going forward. And it's worked out fairly well. The first next line, which is line 35, which is the MDT replacements. So in the cruisers, we have computers in every one of the cruisers. We have 5 frontline vehicles that are all outfitted with computers. We have 1 spare that allows us to rotate through when they fail, and they do, fail once in a while. The oldest in the fleet is, I believe, 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, there's 2 that are in the fleet that are 10 years old. They are no longer repairable. They're still functioning, but the day they fail, we don't have a frontline computer. So we're looking to replace 2 this year out of the 5.
So
Do
for
one
our
next
new
year. Sorry.
MDT stands for what?
Mobile data terminal.
Okay.
Sorry, it's a computer.
No, I understand that, but just everybody on watching us may not.
Yeah, it's mobile data terminal. So it's a dedicated machine that is used by the police department to do records, lookups, checks, and communicate back and forth between the station. That's how they do things electronically. So we're looking to try to replace 2 this year out of the 5, and then see where the fleet is next year, and potentially do 1 or 2 next year if we do that. The next line item is the storage array I mentioned earlier. As I said, the storage array that we have in the town hall today was put into service late 2011. It's been in service for 8 years, 9 if you want to add up. It is flawless, so I'm worried jinxing myself. Thank you. But 2 things are going on with that. One, it's no longer supportable, so I can't get support if something does happen, and if there needs any parts, I can't get replacement parts. Secondly, our usage of storage has increased, and predominantly driven by the police department and their evidence records. And every car stop, everything that goes on creates a video, and those videos are getting larger and larger, and that's where all this data is stored. So between running out of space and having to face with replacing it, I'm looking to replace it in kind to offset, and then also re-leverage this platform as long as it runs, relocate it in our other location as a secondary storage to take off what I call static data that's not required, and put it in the other storage until it can go away, basically until it archives out. Our archive retentions are anywhere between a year and 2 years, depending on if it's involved in an investigation or if it's needed for other reasons. So we do have a fair amount of data. And that, like I said, it's $25,000 is the estimated cost. There is a quote or a quote there to show.
And you expect that we'll be able to get another 6 to 8 years out of this?
Yeah, this array, I have had good luck with this manufacturer. They will run forever. And like I said, I'm not going to get rid of the old one.
Right.
I'm going to move it to a secondary role, and when it dies, it just dies. But I expect to get another 5 years out of it.
Right, but my point is, we're not going to get hit with $25,000 again for this item for a little while.
No, I would say it would be 5 to 10 years at this point. The only thing I can see potentially is having to expand it for more storage, but at that point we could expand it. I can't expand this one because I can't get the parts for it.
People are going to stop running stop signs. Won't be all set.
It's not just stop signs though. I wish it was just that.
Yeah.
Isn't there a technology fund, like special fund, something?
There is. We put it in here to represent what it is, right? It's going to be here, and if the board decides to use those funds instead, then they'll remove it, I guess. But it's going to be up to the board to decide. I just felt it was important because we've had these conversations in the past about the radio systems and stuff like that, and not seeing what that looks like. I wanted to make sure that you knew about it, and if the board finds another way to fund it, to either savings and or tapping into that fund, that'll be their call, I guess.
Just one general question, right? I mean, we've gone through a series of reviews last week, right? We're going through a series of reviews today, right? The rationale that's been explained thus far makes a lot of sense for some of these, larger increases that we've seen.
Mhm.
So my question, I guess, to the town administrator is, or even the chair, how are we doing against the tax cap?
There was a discussion last week that there was some information outstanding, I believe, in order to factor that in.
So if you want, when John's done and police is done, we can talk about that.
Perfect.
Sure. I mean,
I did
I'm just
spend time on
sensitive
it
to
last week.
where we're going to make reductions because, at some point there's going to have to be some tough decisions here.
Exactly. And I've been working on the tax cap this week. I think I've got a pretty good estimate.
Okay. Wait, thank you.
And we do have work to do. Yeah. But I do think I've been talking to John, and John has been talking to the board, and I plan on talking to the chair of the board and having this item on the agenda for the next selectmen's meeting to see if we take this $25,000 and purchase it now from our capital reserve fund. That would help. Won't solve all of our problems with the budget, but it will help. So,
Mhm.
Okay. The next one is the door security phase 2 project. So you may or may not be aware, at the beginning of or end of last year, the door security system for this building failed. It was another 20-year investment that just died and was no longer repairable. So we were able to carry on the same program we did next door and extend that system into this facility. And in the phase one, we basically attacked all the primary access doors. So the public access doors, employee, main hallways, and the police department replicated what they currently had from a system perspective. But as that system went into place, we realized that we have lots of doors that are supposed to be audited that shouldn't be on a key, and they should be on a sort of an audit system. And this would extend that system into those other areas that we didn't have in place before, but because of the system and the ability to control and audit it, it's thought to be a good idea to do, especially in some of the findings we've had in the past with MRI and those other things, especially in the police department. So one example would be evidence control. Well, it's a key, right? You know, someone, you don't know who actually went into the room.
Mhm.
There's a camera, you got to pull a lot of data, but there's no real live data. So this will allow us to actually take those doors and put them under key card control and allow us to remove the keys that float around this town and no one knows where we have them.
We had a discussion at the school a couple of years ago.
Right. Right. And part of the system will be also, in the case of the public side of it, front doors be under the same control, open automatically, close automatically. This door will be under key control and open when meetings are scheduled here and lock up afterwards too. So it gives us a lot more flexibility. It's worked out really well next door. I know you participated in it. Other than a small scheduling problem, no one told anybody about it, but that's all right.
There was a breakdown somewhere.
Doors
It all
locked?
got worked out. It all got, huh?
The door was locked?
The door was
locked.
locked.
Yeah.
I just figured I was like a minute early because all of a sudden it clicked. But
It should open 15 minutes before usually. That's what usually.
That's what I figured it did. But you know, we'll
Next
work
time-
out the kinks.
Next time, text me and then Chief doesn't be calling me out.
I don't have your phone number.
Whatever. I got yours. I'll text you back. So that's that. Again, there may be other ways to fund it, whether impact fees or whatever. It's here because it's something we need to discuss and try to accomplish. And if we can accomplish it this year, it would be nice because the ceilings will be opened back up again for more wiring as we finish out the security camera system installed at the end of this year. So
That makes
that'd be
sense.
ideal. Other than that, there's no other changes. We still carry the 5-year lease program for the two primary printer copiers, police department and town hall is in here. And as anybody has a computer knows, or maybe not know, we're transitioning off of Microsoft Windows 7 to 10. We started last year. This is just a phase of doing it. Basically, upgrading our existing system, not to go buy net new. Most of the time we'll get it net new, but this will be the ones that are like we just bought last year. We'll just do the physical upgrades. And that's that. And then in line 741, that's our equipment lease, which carries I think it's the usage side of the copiers that we have that we pay monthly. That's it.
Well, one question I have. We started at 85,000 in 2017 and we're up to 100 and almost 81,000 in 2020. Is that where we're going to be or is there going to where do we end up seeing an annual budget ending up? Are we going to be spending almost $200,000 a year? Or are these just major investments that need to be made and we're going to go back down to a lower number?
Yeah, so unless we probably adopt what you talked about, taking a fifth of our capital and kind of putting it aside, you're looking at a bump every 5 years at least. And maybe because you'll have maintenance that'll have to come back into play, and then if you're going to do replacements, you got a bigger bump, right? We've always tried to do 5 to 7 years. As when we did the first time back in 2011, we had 3 years of no maintenance costs, and then we had the $5,000 to $7,000, $8,000 bump just a bump year over year. I would say you're looking at, unless you do some pre-planning and it's put into the fund and it's not tapped, that's where you're at. All the other costs everything is going up, and that's unfortunate. We consume a lot of services to protect us. Those are continuing to go up as the usage goes up. Bandwidth, as we expand our wireless, that usage goes up. I don't see this kind of bump. If you withdraw the 58,000 out of the picture, it's pretty consistently flat across the board. Right? Obviously, when I'm ready to retire from this role, there would be an increase around labor, right? Because you're not going to hire somebody for the amount of money.
I remember that discussion.
Right. So, that's another plan. That's another significant bump if it was to occur. This can't be done by a volunteer or somebody who doesn't come in, or even I would argue that you can't even get a contractor to come in and do it at the same level because it does require a lot of hand holding sometimes and coming back and forth. But that would be the other bump I would think of.
So how much is currently in the capital reserve funds? And then what is the intention? What do we intend to, what
So
does the town intend to do
We
with
just
that money?
created it.
yeah, we just created last year. It's
Right.
50,000.
50,000.
Yeah. And I didn't want to bring this up, but I know Carrie knows about this because she beat me up last year in the budget committee about it. There's another looming technology problem, and it's not IT related, it's communications related.
Mhm.
And I'm going to say it. I don't think you wanted me to say it, but I think
But I
have
actually
to.
think that's what the fund was kind of started
Well,
for.
it was for
to help
both. It was really for both.
It was to help level fund the
Yeah.
expense because it was
Yeah.
going to be huge.
So
Towers.
the last couple of years, we've been working with our communications company to kind of figure this out, and we've really got down to a finite number now. And the challenge is we have the average age of our communications core, not the cruisers and the stuff in the cars. Those are all fairly new. The walkies are fairly new, but the systems that actually allow them to be able to talk to each other, the average age is 21 years old, and every one of those devices are no longer being manufactured or repaired. The last time we had an outage, I sat in a cold room picking parts of another box to try to make it work with our communications people. They have advised us that if we do have another failure, we have a problem. I have kind of said, let's not touch that fund if we can avoid to, because I don't know what's going to happen. We have talked to the vendors. We've got a plan. The problem, whenever the board decides to execute on that plan, it's 6 months before it's operational. So, I hope was, we just turn the key and it's going to turn on, we'll be ready to go, right? But no, it's not. It's going to be 6 months from
Testing.
order, from build out, acquiring towers, site work, power draw, 6 months or more. So if we even pull the trigger now, we're looking at probably May or June before it's actually physically operational. The good news is the price is south of $1 million, but it's south of $1 million, right? And I don't want to get into the pricing on it because I don't have all the exact numbers yet, but I would prefer we don't tap that fund, because if we do have a failure and we've got to do some kind of Band-Aid, that Band-Aid will cost us 25 to 30 grand. And it may just be a throwaway too at that point. This is what's really concerning for me, is that there's no way to Band-Aid the system we have. If we have to buy a primary transmitter or a primary voter or a receiver site, we're buying that new that may or may not be able to be compatible with what we're going to put in going forward, because they're not interruptible.
Are there any other grants available to help us?
So
offset
we're looking
some
at that too. And I think there are some communications grants. Some of them require us to get on other systems that don't work out well for Litchfield because we're in a valley, and require us to put just as much, if not more, to do it. But we are looking at that too. They're out there.
So what kind of timeline do you think you'll have before we kind of flesh out what we want to end up doing?
If I had my druthers, it'd be now. We flush it out and we move forward.
But yeah,
My guess is the board has to we have to present the other findings to the board again. I provided a little of a high level plan that we had. We sat down with the departments, went through the plan, we modified it a little bit, we adjusted some things. That shifted the price a little bit different, and that has not been presented yet.
right. And
I
that
don't
would
have
end up, but ultimately I think that the board would want that rolled into your capital plan, right? Because that's a big capital expenditure.
Yeah.
But it's, you're talking about, it's going to be a warrant article question, and you're going to be looking at financing, and it's a large number.
Is this role in the fire department's communications?
This is the fire. This is the whole town. So we've taken the approach that it's going to be a public safety system. It covers both fire, police, and highway. In addition, there's other options of bundling the school on top of it too, with a DMR, in another system. But that's something we're still exploring, because we have coverage problems. When we go into the school, our officers can't communicate. Our fire department can't.
Nobody can communicate in there.
Right. So we're trying to, in that plan, we're also trying to fix that problem too. So, so it does. And I'm facing with a problem right now is that the primary transmitter for the fire department is sitting in the old fire department, and it needs to get moved. But if we pick it up and move it, it may not survive the move. And where do we put it? If I move it to up here, it's going to cost me $120,000 to construct the tower to make it work. And it's wasted money. We won't need it.
Right.
Because the ultimate plan is to put the primary site up on Colonial Drive on the water tower.
So another question then, if we do this expansion, whenever, will it be able to accommodate like whatever we do with the police station, or are we going to see additional increases?
No, everything. If the police station was to move, it doesn't change anything.
Whether it gets expanded or it moves, yeah.
Whatever has occurred, it doesn't change anything.
Okay.
The only thing in the police station is what they have today, and that would still remain. All the primary infrastructure is where it's going to be, and it won't change.
Okay.
We may have to remove we may have to move a receiver site, but that's a minor thing. That's not a big thing. So I kind of went to the back of the book and gave you the cliff notes, but
I
I'm really
appreciate it.
curious of what that number is.
I guess. Can you give me a thumbs up or down?
it's less than 800. So,
North of 5.
More than five.
but less than what I originally, because I think I quoted like $1.2 million or something, $1.3 million.
Yeah, I wanted to throw something at you.
Yeah. So it's not, again, it's not cheap. And we're talking about 3 departments that are all drastically in need. I mean, like I said, fire department, police department, their systems are the same age.
Mhm.
And matter of fact, I think it was last weekend we lost a voter, and I came in and I was able to get it back up and running again. But we don't know when it's not going to come back, and the primary thing for the police department is communications. If they can't talk to the guy next to them, they can't deal with issues, right? So it's a need, and it has to happen. And I think we have to figure out a way to how to either take it over time, right?
Well, I just heard that we had some money coming from infrastructure.
It's for hard roads, so
Oh.
when I say infrastructure, I was going to go, maybe we can tap it.
Well, we have to build a road up to the water tower.
I mean, is this, so I guess, just a follow-up question to the town administrator, right? I know there is this discussion about a capital improvement. Is this something that can roll into that overall town-wide plan and defer this cost for another year until that plan's ready? Or is this something that's more of a pressing immediate need?
I
I'm
think
hearing
this,
the latter, but.
I think this is going to be a warrant article this year.
I stress that it's a pressing need, and only because if we were in a different situation where the vendor could get his parts,
I think
we
that's
could roll
a
it.
concern,
The
right?
problem is, I think it was the year before, I was up at the Verizon site, which is off of Morgan, with the vendor for 5 hours, and he literally took a box of spare parts and try to get one that worked, right? Same generation of parts, but the parts are getting harder. And then the question is, how long are those parts going to last?
Mhm.
So everything we do is just a Band-Aid, and as, the other thing that complicates it is that we're all using older technology, like with Consolidated, for example, to link our sites. That has to go away too, because that's also another problematic point. We can't do anything with that until we upgrade the system. So there's a lot of factors that makes it a priority. Like I said, for 2 years, we've been trying to figure out what it's going to look like. And
Well, it sounds like at least you're narrowing the scope as to what it's going to look like.
yeah, and here's the other thing too is, unfortunately, there's not too many vendors that do this,
Mhm.
especially with the vendors we use, as far as the gear we use, and you're on a waiting list.
Mhm.
When something breaks, I've been squeaky, so I've been able to get them to come out. We had to repair an antenna down at the school. I think that cost us almost $4,000 just to get that gear up and running, as we had no other choice. I hate to see you throwing out little money
Right.
if we can't resolve the problem long term.
Well, I mean, because then eventually you get to the point where the box doesn't have the part you need, and then you're completely
Right.
screwed.
And I'm sure that's going to happen. They, like I said, they've advised us that there's a good chance that the next time you have a failure, they may not be able to bring it up again. And they'll figure it out. We'll figure it out, but we could be out without communications or have our communications, restricted drastically for a couple of days.
Back to CB radios.
No. So,
Well, appreciate that. I'm sorry you had to be the bearer of that bad news. So
better be than anybody else, right?
promise not to shoot the messenger. So, any other good news? No, it's all bad after
I'm not
this.
retiring anytime soon. Let's go that way.
Well, at least we'll
I
keep
don't
you
know if that's good
busy.
news or bad news. That's my life.
So would you have anything else for us, or are you,
I think that's all I had. Unless there's any other questions for me.
I just
go ahead.
No, I just had a question about the phase 2 of the door security. As far as I mean, I hear what you're saying about being able to have that record of the card swipes. Is that any sort of like legal mandate or law or record, or is that just would be easier on us?
I don't know if there's any legal mandate, but it's, when we're asked who's entered a room, we can't tell them who entered the room, right? We can tell them who got in the building potentially, but not who got in the room. So, I mean, you can probably define it as this is a nice to have potentially, But if you look at our key management that we have going on,
Yeah. No, I understand. I'm
Well,
just
no one knows
thinking
about
of
the case.
priorities.
No, and to that point, though, I think that if maybe you pull, if we have not this level of investment every year, maybe you take one of them and do that next year, kind of do the level funding of projects.
Mhm.
Because it sounds like we have a lot bigger needs. So, but not that it's not a need, or like I'm sure that
Yeah.
if a prosecutor asked who entered the room, it'd be very nice to be able to have an immediate answer.
Mhm.
But we only have so many funds to go around. So,
That's right.
all right. Anything else? Well, thank you very much for your time, John.
You're very
Good
welcome.
to see you. Thank you.
Have a great night.
Thanks.
As well.
I plan to.
Madam Chair, can I just inquire if we're on account number 6 out of 18 that we're going to review tonight?
All right. Do you want to go talk faster? Is that what we're saying?
Well, no, we have a scheduled adjourn at
Yeah.
9, so I guess I just want to understand, do we intend to review the remaining
Can we-
12 accounts tonight?
Do you think we can get through them quickly?
I think so. Your police is going to take,
That'd be the
most of
biggest
your time,
one.
then the rest is going to be very quick.
Okay.
Yeah, they will be. Some of them we can't even take action on, so.
Yep. Talk fast.
Yep.
All right.
So I would ask Captain Sergeant to join us.
Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you too for your time.
No, thank you for your time. Thank you for the opportunity to present the budget. And I'm going to try to move very quickly and sneak a couple things by you, in the interest of getting out on time. I'll get right into it.
Don't do my joke. It didn't work.
Okay, very good.
I caught it. I got you. I was trying to be nice to him first. This is your first presentation, right? We're gonna play. I can be nice, and then I'll get him.
Very good. Well, thank you again. So getting into the budget here, 110, the PD salary administration. Those are the salaries for the chief of police and the captain. Those are contractual. Moving to 111, PD officers. Those numbers are contractual. You will see an increase. It's due to raises, and also next year we're going to see some people per the contract receive some monies for achieving their degrees, master's degree, associate's degree, and also a bonus for a certified officer who came on. If that officer completes their probation, there's a $5,000 bonus for coming over being a certified officer. So those are some of the increases that you would see there. Also, this was per the contract. The town agreed for a second shift differential for officers who are working the second shift. They receive a 50-cent an hour stipend. So that's part of the increase into that line.
Do we see any promotions or anything? Are these any of them change from status? Or is it all just related to salary increases?
Well, specifically, the two newest hires were certified officers with 10 plus years of experience. So they came in to the rank of corporal. Typically, a younger officer coming out of college or someone who's never had any experience would start at a much lower rate. So you would see an increase in wages there because of the rank that they received coming on board with our department.
Okay, probably saving training though.
I think Lang went MPO.
Oh, yes.
Lang,
Yes.
I don't know about Ibis.
Yeah.
Lang did.
Officer Lang obtained the rank of MPO. And the other corporals were the same. There's also some longevity increases. Some of the officers have been reached their 10th year with the department in service to the town. So they receive a stipend there per the contract. Moving forward to 120 PD wages for the administrative assistant. There's an increase there. She had a wage increase per the town personnel policy. Also, she's receiving her longevity stipend. PD wages for special officers. The increase there is contractual. The two permanent part-time officers are retired certified officers. So the town agreed to for a wage increase for them based on their experience and their expertise into their positions.
Oh no, I was just getting excited about the next couple of numbers.
Very good. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about this one too.
It's to see what we've been
Finally.
talking
We
about.
have been talking about
Yeah.
it. So, there's actually more of a cost savings than you'll see with just the 13,000 there. So for line 140 PD wages, the overtime, the chief and I spend a lot of time figuring out when we're up to staff, when we have 13 full-time officers, how can we account and move forward and see that cost savings that we spoke about at the deliberative 3 years ago. And we estimated that the 13th officer, that we could get to a point where we could at a minimum save $65,000, and we were hoping for more. I will tell you, since that warrant article passed, we have been understaffed. Currently, we're understaffed by one because of an officer's military obligations.
Would you thank him for his service?
Yeah,
I do
absolutely.
appreciate that.
Absolutely. When he comes back at the beginning of March, knock on wood here with, no retirements or people leaving, we'd be full staff. We can implement a new schedule and we would be able to reduce 706 hours of overtime. So we lay out under the item in the notes section of what's the average for the officers. If you compare the numbers under those officers compared to last year, you'll see a reduction of 706 hours. That's an approximate $36,000 savings if you took the average from a sergeant to the lowest paid patrol officer. The other benefit that you don't see on that end is that's equivalent to almost $19,000 in savings for retirement, for what the town would have to pay out in retirement. So that takes it over $50,000 in savings just based on that. We believe that we're going to be able to absorb the cost of the 2 months. We've been fortunate. Our detective oftentimes will go to plain clothes to help reduce overtime. So that's working well. Again, the overlapping shifts. If an officer comes in at 9, where we would then have 3 patrol units on the street, we would cut down to 2 to save out on the overtime for the rest of the shift. So again, it allows us the chief has been very focused and dedicated to having a minimum of 2 officers out on the street, but we're actually going to reduce the overtime rate by having overlapping shifts. So we're going to have more patrol officers out there, when people aren't out on vacation, sick and whatnot. And then when they do, we don't have to fill the overtime because we're still at our minimum of 2 officers. Really excited to report that to the budget committee, the selectmen, the townspeople, and we hope to see this plan work and see how we can continue to save and get some smiles out of you again next year. I think you'll like the next line too, 140 PD wages for the captain overtime. When I signed my contract, the position typically was one that did cover patrol shifts. What the town and I agreed upon was to start on a tier program to start reducing the amount of overtime that the captain would work. So for next year, the captain will not be covering any patrol shifts, God bearing an emergency or whatnot. And we believe that reduction of $10,075 leaves enough there for special call outs, fatal motor vehicle accidents, critical incidents, internal investigations. So we feel really comfortable with that. And then we can certainly track that number again next year moving forward. So again, that 10,000 savings would also be an additional $2,800 in retirement savings. So when we start adding up those numbers, you're right around the $65,000 that we anticipated, and we're hoping to trend even higher. It's obviously hard to account for unforeseen circumstances. If someone leaves the department, retires, but when we have 13, we're going to be solid and be able to reduce on those expenses. The PD overtime for court, there's a small increase, and that reflects the wage increases per the collective bargaining agreement. So there's a small increase there. So for our PD overtime training, line 149, it's often we get here and we see that line item appears to be underspent. And then when we get to the end of the budget and we're at line 811 for PD seminars and conventions, that's overspent. So what the chief and I wanted to do is really take a look at the last few years. What are we actually spending on overtime? What are we actually spending for PDs for these seminars and conventions? Let's make those a more accurate representation. So you see, hey, we spend $20,000 on overtime. That's where we estimate it to be. And the seminars and conventions, this is what we spend. There is no increase on those 2 lines. So this line reflects a reduction of 10,348. On the line 811, your PD seminars and conventions down the road, that will increase by 10,348. It's the exact same number that we've been at in the past, which is a good working number for the department. And I think, the training is so important, to advance in professional development. It helps with officer retention, and it allows our officers to serve you with a better service and a better quality service. The PD uniform allowance, there's an increase there that is contractual. There was an increase there for the amount that officers within the collective bargaining unit received to launder their clothing uniforms.
Why is there a difference in cost between chief, captain, and the sergeants?
So the chief has his own contract. His is 400. My contract as the captain is 500. That mirrored what the cost was for the union then, and then the
400 in here.
400 for captain, 400 for chief.
Jeez, I thought I was getting 500. So
I'm sorry.
that's all right. So exactly. You know what? I was thinking of the actual clothing allowance. So for the laundering, yes,
This is cleaning.
the chief and I get the 400, and they negotiated an increase to the 500. So we were all 400 before. Per the collective bargaining agreement, each officer will get an additional $100 over the year. Thank you for helping me to clarify that.
Thank you. That's in addition to purchases, uniform purchases.
Correct. Moving forward, 199, the community detail, you're going to see a significant increase here. That's based on a couple of factors. The town and the union negotiated detail rate increase, so we had to account for that. There's also been more of a demand for community details, special events in town, events at the school, football games, basketball games, other events that we cover for charity events at Town Hall. A small increase for when the Honor Guard partakes in the Memorial Day Parade, the high school graduation. I do want to let you know they do all of their training for free. And certain events that you might have seen where they went to Fenway Park, that's on their time. So it's kind of a great opportunity for them to, represent Litchfield, New Hampshire in these things. They're not getting paid a community detail for those events. It would be your Memorial Day Parade. And this is the first year that we have this unit. The health insurance, dental insurance, and the disability, I think you got the updated rates from Troy here. So those are numbers that he provides.
And these are reflective of that increase?
Yeah.
Okay.
Those changes have been made throughout the budget.
Thank you, Troy. Your life insurance doesn't change. The 325, the prosecutor contracted services, you'll see a $4,000 increase. That's a salary per his contract. He's entering the third year of his contract. Moving down to 342, our PD software support, an increase in $485. Again, these are licensing fees for our records management systems, also to allow for any repairs, software components for our in-cruiser camera systems and whatnot. So those are just minor increases there.
So why isn't this part of the IT budget?
I'd have to speak with the chief and Mr. Brunel. I think typically.
He's right over there.
Right behind you.
I was raising his hand.
Okay, yeah, thank you, John.
For department-specific software, we kept it in the department. The clerk still carries their software because it's specific to the department. We do the same thing with the police department. Anything that's used by the general employees or services are kept in my budget. But we broke that rule with data and all that. That's all in my budget. So, but that's why it's there.
Thank you.
Line 355, PD pre-employment screening, you'll see a reduction of $1,600. We're up to full staff. We feel that the amount of monies that we're budgeting for, the $1,000, would be enough in the event that we had to hold the testing, conduct a medical psych evaluation of a new employee. We don't see a need for that in the future, but we feel with the testing materials that we have on hand, we could reduce that number. Moving down to 610, PD general supplies, you're going to see an increase of $800. That's a reflection of the drug box that we have out in the front lobby. no longer can we dispose of those drugs that are taken in for free. We now have 4 times a year where we can dispose of those, and it's at a cost of $200 per time. So it'd be $800 to get rid of those drugs. And we're taking in quarterly, it averages 40 to 60 pounds and whatnot. So then it's so important to get that off the street, get it disposed of and done. So there is an increase there. Moving down to 620 PD office supplies, you'll see an increase of $1,000. We'd like to purchase a storage unit for the Class A uniforms for the Honor Guard. I think some of you had the opportunity to walk the station. They're not being stored properly. They're hanging in the woman's shower
That's what I
room.
was saying. This is the shower ones.
And, we found a piece of equipment that we'd be able to put, those uniforms, the boots, the duty belts, and all the flags, the carriers, and to be able to store them properly and, help them to have a better lifespan. Well,
Where are you going to put it?
It's gonna get jammed into the sergeant's office. So that's where you have your detective, your 2 sergeants, and another desk. We're gonna move out a small filing cabinet and put that there. So it's not gonna look great. It's gonna look cramped, but the idea is let's get this out so the shower is operable for our female employees, and then it's stored properly. So.
Right, a one-time $1,000.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, just in the effort to move it along a little bit, if I may, right? I mean, the big thing here is obviously the cruiser purchase, right? That's a big decrease in this year's budget.
Correct.
I know we're on the 2-1-2 cycle. It looks like you're continuing with that trend.
Yes, sir.
So my main concern, right, is this budgeted properly, right? I know some of the committee might hate me for saying this, but I actually think it's too low, right? You tell me. I mean, because what we've seen is actually an overspend on this budget this year, mainly because of the outfitting costs to the vehicles.
This year's overspending is a result of a cruiser accident where a vehicle was totaled.
Okay.
So we had to replace that, and we got about half of the cost. It was an Explorer that was totaled. We got about half of the monies to purchase the new Tahoe. So that's where you'll see that. This number is actually a good representation of what it would cost to purchase the vehicle and then outfit it in the same manner with the same equipment that we have now. We're also we're trading in detail vehicles, and we're getting $4,000 to $6,000 for these older units with 130,000 miles. So that helps offset that. So I actually do think that's a good reflection as to what the cost would be to purchase the vehicle.
And then the only other question I would have would be about the portable radios over the next 3 years. Is that a 3-year plan?
Yes, ma'am. So a majority of our portables that are out with our patrol officers they're deficient, they're old, you can't replace them, very similar to some of the other communication things John talked about. If something breaks, you can't get parts for them. If the radio breaks, they're not going to service them. So we feel it's important to look at a 3-year span. And there's 4 radios that are really old. So that's where we thought 4 is a good number. Let's get those out and then move to the next year, get the next 4 oldest, get the next 4, and have that as a 3-year plan.
And they'll be compatible with whatever system you're in.
Absolutely.
All right. And these aren't tied to cruiser outfitting. These are separate.
These are separate.
Okay.
These would be the portables that the officer would wear on their duty belt.
Okay. All right. I think that's all I have for this budget. Does anybody, unless there's anything else you'd like us to?
No, that made it easy for me. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? And if you have any that come to mind after you leave, please feel free to send them along.
I do have one question, right?
Go
And
for
it's
it.
same type of thing where we went through the, top priorities when we did the tour. And one of the main concerns was some of the safety glass for I mean, where is that even being addressed?
Yeah, so I think, learning knew what funds would be available to us other than what's in the budget. I had a conversation with the chief about what his plans are to address that. It's a fantastic question. I apologize. I don't have the answer to that. I think I know that the chief and I have wanted to sit down and, what's the long-term goal? We're starting to communicate more about that. As we know, there's safety, space, and storage concerns with that building. And we're talking about, is there an addition or phase 2?
I get that, but this just seems like such a more of a pressing, imminent matter that needs to be addressed.
Correct.
In the short term versus as a part of a long-term plan.
Correct. I'm happy to speak with the chief and get back to you on that. I agree with you. It's important. It's not reflected in the budget that was prepared.
My question to the chief and to Troy is that something that should be, right?
I think you need to start with like an estimate. Like, are you
Well,
talking
I don't know how
like-
you do that, but
I mean, is it a $10,000 problem or is it a $2,500 problem? So I think that would change the answer. So how would you?
agree. But that is
Right.
one of the top 3 priorities.
No, I absolutely agree. I would encourage them to do that research and figure out what is the cost impact we're looking at to begin with, and then we can figure out how to address it. Because I think that answer is going to determine which course we want to take.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you're here. Are you here for the next one? Police support
Yeah,
services?
police support.
Excellent.
Again, very quick. It's just contractual. It's all the union contract where things change. So you'll see the wages increase, the overtime increases, uniform allowance increases, and their clothing allowance, the laundering increases. It's just all contractual. So there's nothing new there in the interest of time.
Well, but the overtime, it's
Any
contractual,
questions?
but it never seems to be spent in its entirety from what's budgeted.
So we cover that they could take 22 days a year. They're entitled to that. It generally gets filled by the other full-time officer. We're not running any part-time officers, which we had 3 years ago. We do have the benefit of Hillsborough County, who in the event one of the full-time officers cannot work, they'll cover a shift, 8 hours here, 4 hours there. So that helps save on that line.
Do they get to bank the hours? Like is it an option for like?
Yes, they do. They can carry over up to a certain amount.
Right, so I mean, would it be wise then if they don't spend it to actually be putting it in a fund so that when it becomes needed, we have the money available?
Sure.
I mean, just because we have an obligation, right? There's a liability there. Is it like the other situations where when you separate from this organization, you get to take your money with you to unused times?
These are union. These
Or is it
employees are part of the union contract, and
Right.
the ability to earn time, accrue it, carry it forward, and cash it out is all covered in their contract.
Right. So how do we fund that?
We have a capital reserve fund that's very healthy.
Okay.
Right now, we have $100,000 in that capital reserve fund this year.
Right. I'm just saying that if each dispatcher receives 22 days earned and they only use say 10, then we're liable for 12. So wouldn't we bank that 12? Just thinking long-term planning, like we owe it to them. Why would we not set it aside for future expenditures? It's just my thinking out loud of how I would fund it. That's all. Because it could come due.
Yeah, so we have, at the end of the year, employees, if they meet certain thresholds where they've met the minimum usage requirement, then they can sell back a certain amount of time.
Okay.
So they can buy down some of those days.
And that would be reflected in the actual expense then?
What's that?
That would be reflective in the actual expenditure column because you would have caught.
We take those buyback checks, when we cut them at the end of the year, we take them out of the capital reserve fund.
Okay. So yeah, so we may be spending more of it. It's just not allocated against this line.
Right.
Okay. All right, that's all I've got. Anybody else have anything else? Are you here also for animal control?
Animal control, and that remains the same as last year.
All righty. Let me just take a look at it though. 4414.
Can you give us a sense of how often that building is used?
It's often quite a bit. We receive quite a large amount of loose dog calls. It would actually, and what ends up happening is we pick the dog up or someone picks up the dog, brings it to the station, and then we're transporting that dog to the kennel. Typically with social media posts and people sharing information, the dog owner usually comes forward within an hour to 2 hours. We have had cases where we've had dogs for weekends, 6-7 days, and we're responsible, for feeding and watering, for the dog and whatnot. So the building is used very frequently.
No.
We've had dogs get picked up in their yard. People think it's a loose dog, and it's in their yard. So, that's always funny when the owner comes to pick up their dog, and they said, "Well, where did you get it?" "Oh, 10 Main Street, let's say, and that's where I live." But those things have happened.
That brings up other questions, like why are you walking on somebody else's property? But okay. All right. So, any questions relative to this one?
No, thank you. This was great.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
So thank you for your questions. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your support.
Well, thank you for coming in, and excellent job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Troy.
Thank you, Ben.
All right. Now talk fast for the rest of them.
All right, well, let's just move right on to revaluation of property, 4150.1.
Part of the contract.
So you have an increase this year. What we're doing, I'm trying to break it out to you in the column there, just to give you an idea of what's going on. 2020 will be our update year. So we'll be doing our normal regular assessing work. That's estimated the cost, it's contract, of $11,770. The Avatar 2020 update will be $91,500. And as Carrie spoke about earlier in the meeting, we had a 5-year contract, and we tried to level fund this with the idea that at the end of the year, we encumber the balance of funds and start to spend against those in the preceding year. So we have about $50,000 that we'll have encumbered in 2019 to put towards this cost. But we're still coming up a little short, and that's why you're seeing an increase this year of $5,945. A lot of this has been over the past years. We've had to use our assessing services money towards other assessment cases, primarily Pennachuck Waterworks. We had a big case with them. We were able to settle. And most recently with Eversource PSNH, and we just recently settled. So what I wanted to point out to you, probably 48 hours ago, there was a line in here for $6,000. I have removed that because we have come to an agreement with Eversource, and we will not be doing any abatement work in 2020 on the Eversource tax appeal. So that's what's going on next year in 2020.
All right. That was quick. Unless anybody has any questions. All right. Next.
Legal, 4153. So no change here. Our general legal services, $15,000.
My favorite ones there.
And the PFOA legal counsel, special legal counsel, is still at $45,000. This is still ongoing, and we do fully expect that we're going to have legal costs
Till the day I
2020.
die, basically, right?
Yeah, look, so, on legal, if I may, right, this is one that we've always budget. Again, we seldom utilize the entire budget. Granted, we will always have legal expenses. I get it.
Yep.
But in light of the earlier discussion and a subsequent conversation that we have to have on tax cap, is this an area where we can shave, 10 grand, right, to help reduce that burden?
Yep.
So,
Yeah, I mean, the historical spend works against us here. I understand that. And we're budgeting because we want to make sure we have enough legal funds available in 2020 in case the status changes from where we're at right now.
I'm resigning myself, so it's never going to change, and then I will see the same line item till the day I die. So,
I would have sworn that we had made a reduction in this last
I think
year.
that it does reflect a reduction, wasn't it higher?
You had made a reduction prior to the PFOA legal. I think in prior years, the general legal was higher than 15,000,
That's what happened.
and that got reduced, and we've maintained it at 15.
I don't know. It's just,
I think
I
you're
think
correct.
that's what, yeah.
okay. So I do like your point though. It is an area to look at.
Yep.
Next.
Personnel 4155. So this is one of those ones where I don't have our short-term disability quotes yet. We don't have our workers' comp, which is probably the biggest one. It should be here, right? Workers' comp and our unemployment. So the rest of these are payroll taxes strictly driven by, New Hampshire State retirement, any wage increases. You'll see these line items for retirement, Social Security, Medicare, they all get increased by a certain percent based on wages that we're projecting in 2020.
All right. So there's going to be room for adjustment in here based on what information you.
What I'd really like to understand is the wage expense line. Obviously, not me not being part of the committee last year, and this was the first time it was introduced, the 15 grand,
Merit increase.
right? And then you're right, so that 15 grand there as well. I mean, what is this all about?
Well, that was there. I believe that's been there for the last 3 years now. That is the performance base for our non-union employees. So it's $15,000 that covers the cost of all wage increases effective July 1st on an annual basis.
So what happened?
That's all
yeah.
highway, town office staff, the fire department staff, any of the non-union employees.
But the reason it comes in 2019 is because prior to that, we were implementing the new plan. And so once the wages increased as a result of the plan increase, right? We moved everybody to that new merit-based work system. And then you started the merit-based because it was kind of built into adjusting on the wage plan.
So what we've done the last 3 years is that we have $15,000 that's divvied up amongst all the non-union employees. And that includes all payroll taxes, everything. It represents only 6 months of wage increases. So in the following year, you'll see the 15,000 and another 6 months worth of increase.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Can you just remind us how many folks are pulling from that pool?
You've got all the fire departments. So you've got, so you got 2 full-timers, and then you have about 30 part-time employees there. And then with your town hall, solid waste, highway, I don't know, 15 to 20. Yeah. A mixture of full-time, part-time.
So I guess, my struggle is, right, we spent $1,200 in 16, 0 in 17, 0 in 18. We budgeted 15 and 19. We've actually, as of last Friday's report, we've spent 0, right? And yet we're budgeting it again.
Well, the wage.
We don't.
So that's my question.
No, I'm sorry. We don't charge. So when we give a wage increase, we don't charge to this line.
It's allocated back
We charge it to the salary line to that employee getting.
But we
it. So
budget here.
In theory, we
yeah.
overspend. This just covers the bottom line of the operating budget.
I see.
Yeah.
To make sure that the money is in there to
Yeah.
reallocate.
Because if we would lose the historical spend if we just charged everyone to that. So that's why we do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Good
That's
question.
clear. Thank you.
Good question.
Any other questions relative to this one? Other than we don't have all the updated numbers yet, right?
Now, probably these
In light,
policies, they will come in maybe the end of October, or early November.
so in light of the concern about the tax cap, what do we think our potential exposure is?
So these are some numbers that
'Cause there
will
can be
move
big.
and has an impact on the tax cap that I've been
Right.
trying to.
Are we thinking it's $5,000, $20,000, $50,000?
Yeah, I mean, I think workers' comp, I expect workers' comp to increase, and it could be anywhere from 5,000 to 8,000.
Okay. So if we reduce your legal, it helps maybe buy you some room there. Okay. Any other questions on this one? All right, next. Planning board?
Planning board, 419110. Only increase here, $980. That's for the part-time administrative support staff.
Any questions relative to this one?
Well, I know we've talked about the NRPC planner quite a bit in years past, right? This is again an area where it looks like there's an opportunity to shave some of the money allocated.
Except we were just talking about using them for the capital.
Yeah,
planning.
so one of the
They gotta look
things,
somewhere.
I hear you.
one of the things that's happened here is over a period of the last 2 years, we've had changes. One, we've had changes in the chairmanship of the planning board. So we lost some of the momentum we had going. And the most important thing that really happened too was that we lost the planner. And so we went a period without a planner. And then now we've got one on board, and they're just kind of gearing up, and they're really starting to get focused and organized again on updating the master plan and also updating sections of the zoning ordinance. So you got 2 years of historical spend that you're going to see. We're going to be below the, 21,000. Yeah, but I do believe that work, that activity is going to increase and get us back to that level. Whether it's 18,000, I mean, it's hard.
Yeah.
It is an hourly basis. So if it's 18,000 or 21, I don't know.
Right. Okay. Any other questions relative to this budget? All right, moving on. Brings us to zoning, right?
Zoning board 4191-30. And this is up $320, and this is being driven by, we've seen a lot more activity and the
More
requirements
notices.
of variances. So again, it's not, we have to charge out this cost, and then we do receive revenue on the other end for it. So it cancels out. But there's times when things go wrong and we have to absorb 100% of the legal notification. But typically, most hearings and abutter notices are paid 100% by the applicants.
Any questions relative to this budget? I'm sorry?
No.
Hearing none. Next.
Troy, is Matt here for conservation? I was just wondering. No? Oh, okay.
Oh. Just watch it, yeah.
I just wanted to
We
check.
we did conservation last week, yeah. But
Sorry.
He's just gearing up to see which position he's going to run for in March.
so the next one, town insurance, and I'm pretty sure it's other insurance, 4196, and we do not have those. That's the general liability. We do not have that policy. So there's nothing you can do there. Advertising, regional associations, 4197. 4197. All right. So the first line, 550, is our voter guide, the sample ballot. We've had some increase there, just printing costs, insert costs. Dues and subscriptions, I do not have the NHMA quote yet. The National Regional Planning Commission dues is
Don't you
correct.
have an in with them? Shouldn't we be able to get that number?
They haven't set it at the board. This is about the time of year when they set the dues. NRPC is National Regional Planning Commission. NHMA is New Hampshire Municipal Association.
And they're the ones who do our training.
They did, yeah, they did the training.
All right, next. I'm sorry, hearing any questions before we move on? All right, next.
Mosquito District, 4411. .2, all right. Mosquito District. So no change here. The contractor has been doing our town for many years. He continues to hold his price. But this year we've asked what it would cost to do one extra barrier spray just in case we had to do that. Our contract currently includes one barrier spray. So when we get, you saw that happen this year, some of you, we were very close to needing to do a second barrier spray, but we held off. I mean, we rely on this company to give us that recommendation. But I just have a feeling that this is going to be one of those cycles where we're going to be back in the same situation next year. And that's why I'm proposing that we add an extra $1,000 in case we have to do an extra.
Could I
spray.
suggest then that the line item be like a contingency line item as opposed to contracted services because it's not really part of the contract? I just don't want to look at it next year and be like, oh, the contract value went down. But if I have a contingency line item, then I know that.
Oh, I can add, you know what I'll do is I'll just add 2 sub
Mhm.
lines. So we can have the contract and then I can say extra barrier spray.
Yeah, something like that, just
So
so
you can
it's,
break it out and see it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just, I'm gonna forget next year. So, anybody have any other questions?
Nope.
All right, next.
Health agencies,
Uh.
no sense looking at that. I can tell you where we're at right now. We had that warrant article last year that
Mhm.
raised $25,000. We have not
I was gonna ask,
allocated those funds. We're recruiting some citizens now. So we expect that there'll be 2 things that'll happen. We'll allocate the 2019 funds, and at the same time, while we're talking to these agencies, identify what they're asking for in 2020, and have a recommendation that they'll recommend to the Board of Selectmen, which eventually will get to you folks.
So that'll be a warrant.
And I
Can we fund
expect
it?
it to stay as a warrant article.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
I think I like the way it ended up. I'm not a fan of the amount, but I like the process.
Right. Well, the amount may change as it could go up, could go down,
Yep.
depending on how the committee.
But I prefer that process, so I think that's a more transparent and open process. All right, so that brings us to the end.
So if you just want to click on the tax cap.
Yeah, just back to the tax cap, please.
It's, if you go, it's just underneath summary.
Beginning.
So what I was trying to explain last week is that 2019 is the baseline that I use to determine, with the limitation of no more than $175,000, I have to base off the 2019 actual tax rate and everything that was set by the DRA. So all the forms that we have, our valuation, veterans credits, and revenues and appropriations have been submitted to the DRA. I've used those forms. Those numbers shouldn't change. The problem is revenues. There's a couple revenues that the state will set and tell me exactly what they're going to be when they set our tax rate. So I'm hoping that revenues actually increase a little bit, which if they do, that helps us.
We should at least have that amount that they promised us for this year.
Right, yeah. So anyhow, as of right now in 2020, basing off just my assumption with the proposed budget, the proposed revenues, what I know about the veterans credits, and our overlay and everything, we are right now $30,652 over the $175,000 tax cap.
But this includes
But
health insurance.
You've got workers' comp
Yeah.
coming. You got property liability coming. Those are 2 big policies. We also know that there's some items in the budget that maybe the selectmen might address. I'm not sure. So that doesn't look that bad. We've been higher at this point in time. But you got to keep in mind the fact that we don't have any warrant articles. So that's just your operating budget right now. And just the operating budget is 30,000 over the tax cap. No
There's
warrant
some,
articles.
So I guess I need to recall, right? To the warrant articles put
Yes.
into the tax cap.
Yes.
So if we have an $800,000 communications,
You'll have to vote against it unless we can find 800,000. It would be, no, it depends on how they fund it, because what they did with the fire station, right, is they,
Well, that's a discussion I'll be having with the board, but there's the use of the unassigned fund balance. And,
not that
there's
I'm,
no tax impact, but
but we still would have to have that discussion.
the
because-
problem's going to be is that, if you're able to get the operating budget at the tax cap or below,
Mhm.
any warrant articles that raise money, you may not be able to recommend.
Right, so the way I look at this is I'm sorry. The way I look at this is I need to shave 100,000 out of the budget somewhere, right? So you can stay under the tax cap, right? Because once you get your policies, this is going to increase. Yes, you always have the revenue factor, which is going to help. But at the end of the day, we still as a committee need to shave, I'm going to throw a number, $100,000.
Yeah, I don't think if you're strictly talking operating budget, I don't think so. I'm hoping that you're no more than 50.
Right, that's to
That's
meet the
without-
tax cap though. Like,
Right.
To meet the tax.
Then we have. the
But you're
warrant.
talking operating budget
Right,
only.
but-
I think
I'm
he's
talking operating
factoring,
The tax cap is like the maximum the taxpayers want us to increase the budget by.
Well,
So it doesn't mean it's $175,000 check that we get to write every year.
Right,
Like,
no.
that's the most that we.
what you should do realistically is look through the budget, see what actually is needed, and maybe that'll come in under the tax cap automatically. If not, then we can start looking. I mean, I don't want to say let's get to the tax cap, because what if we could do better than under the tax cap?
Yep, agreed.
So I'm not, I mean, I think that's great information. I think you want to cut, I want to say cut the waste, but I think you want to find deficiencies first and then figure out where we are.
But I think this is helpful to have,
It
a,
is.
have a guide.
Absolutely.
That's,
And
it'll be a fun
all
night.
based on assumption. Right?
It is anyway, though, isn't it?
I know.
There's also, what do you expect? Do you have a sense with the general liability insurance?
That, again, that shouldn't, you know,
Not one of the
the
bigger.
norm is, I don't know, 2.5 to 8%. It's all,
Somewhere in there.
sometimes we've had a decrease, but I always assume there's going to be an increase. And if there's going to be an increase, it's going to be somewhere between 2.5 and 8%.
So are there any other questions that we have tonight relative to the town budget? Because we're not meeting again for 2 weeks. So we have an opportunity to mull over the information, review the paperwork, send your questions to me. And the sooner we can get them to Troy and the town, the sooner we can get answers and start thinking about that. When we meet on the 24th, we'll start diving in, and it can't be, we likely won't be a final, right? Because we might still be looking for some numbers, but we can at least get pretty darn close to start. But that's where we'll start, making start the adjustments. We can't finalize it, but we can start the major adjustments. Last time, I believe we did it by department. You can look at individual lines. I know you like looking at lines, but we'll
He
do.
likes department cuts, but
Oh,
we have
we
to
can-
look at lines.
Yep. So absolutely. So the big date will be in 2 weeks.
So will we, 2 weeks from now, will we know what the town is going to be proposing for warrant articles?
And that would play into it.
I don't believe by the 24th, we'll have those. We're not scheduled to meet again until, I think, October 27th.
So I think that's really important for the committee to understand. So if we go with, we're going to get us to the 175 over, we can't approve any warrant article as a budget committee.
Right.
If that's the number we go by. So
I would contend still that I would tuck that away and still look for what does it take to make this town run. And we might find it's lower. And if it's not, then we can start looking at the huge cuts. But I would at least like to try to find us, like, what does it take first, and then see what our exposure is. So, and that would start on the 24th. Any other things for this? Otherwise, I thank you for your time.
Okay.
Thank you all the departments and everybody who took the time to come in and present. We hope to see a lot of you, or all of you, on the 24th, because I'm sure we'll have questions.
Mhm.
And it's always nice to hear it from the person whose budget I'm going to probably be making actions on more. So,
Between now and then, if we have questions, we should
send them
submit
to me.
you.
Send them to me, and then we'll forward them along. That way, one
Yeah.
channel.
Send them all to Carrie. She forwards them to me.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been fun. All right, so that brings us to the school, where we added enrollment, special election costs, and end of year report. Although I think we mentioned last week that was not going to be available until after this meeting, right? The end of year report. Right, I just did the agenda before that information. We expect to have that for the 24th. All right, so we'll put it on the October 24th agenda, because we don't have much time to discuss it now anyway, so that works out well. The enrollment came through. October 1st numbers. Seems like the classes are holding steady.
Kind of steady, not really going up anything. Dr. Jetty and I are working on the enrollment projections.
Mhm.
We will be presenting them to the board on Wednesday night, and then we will send them over to them.
Excellent. And so for those who are not familiar, you tend to use the projections as a way to determine funding for the school, because a lot of items, class sizes, teachers, supplies are tied to enrollment projections. So that's a great.
Staffing projection there as well.
Excellent. Thank you. And then the special election costs?
Okay, special election costs, I didn't make copies.
That's okay.
You can have, can I use it for 1 second?
Yeah.
So to date, actual costs that we have already incurred would be, most of the costs are in the ads that we've had to put out. And that would have been the full page ad for the court summons in the HLN and the Union Leader, the budget hearings in all three papers, the HLN, Union Leader, Telegraph. Same with the deliberative and voting notices, all three papers. And a local posting, I literally had to go around town and post. So that's basically mileage and like an hour.
Well, I appreciate your time doing that.
It's just, I wanted to be accurate and include everything. We decided that we should include everything. So that right there is $1,716.68.
Okay.
I had to deliver the signed petition to the attorneys, physically deliver this thing. So between my time and mileage, it was $108.
Mhm.
Paper ballot, we're copying in-house at 7 cents per page. 3,000 ballots, $210, which is a lot less than if we had to go and have them printed.
Yeah.
And the cost of deliberative, it says estimated, but it really isn't. My time, the moderator, and the ballot clerks come to about $400. So the grand total right now, I should say subtotal, to date is $2436.10.
And that excludes all legal fees, though.
That is without legal fees. We're still sifting. Those are really hard to sift through because they don't say for this,
Right.
for that. They just go by a date and they, because some of it could be admin assistant
Right.
money. Some could be the lawyer itself. Some could be a phone call. So where Dr. Jetty really does know which is which, and
Right.
he's trying to get you an accurate cost.
No, I appreciate it. I just think that saying 2,400 is way lowballing it. I think there's a lot of.
Oh, that's just to date.
Yeah, I think that's under cap, that's not captured, because I think the legal fees are gonna be
But
multiple
we
of
haven't
that.
hit the election yet, and that's where you're gonna round up a lot of those hours. I mean, you're talking 15 hours for people working.
Well, I
all
even
day.
think cost to date, I think, is way low. If they were saying cost to date is 2,400 excluding legal fees, that means that the cost to date is much higher. So,
No, that's actual. That's everything. I've got all the invoices. I've got everything.
Just minus the legal.
Just minus the legal.
Right. so, and I'm just
So,
saying,
yes,
I
that
think the
would be,
lion's
yeah.
share is gonna be the legal, so,
Well, yeah, the line.
considering how much a lawyer costs per hour.
Absolutely.
So,
But we wanted to get you something.
I appreciate it.
And we didn't want to give you estimates because we don't know what's going to happen.
I appreciate it. It's a start. Thank you. I did see the signs up here. I
The
have,
electric signs.
yeah, the one, are there any on 3A?
There's one on.
There
I
are
like
only
these
two.
three.
Mr. Charbonneau has been gracious enough to let us use them, and we're moving them
Excellent.
around.
They were eye-catching. Excellent.
Thank you to Mr. Charbonneau.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. All right, so is there anything else from the school that we need to know? No? All right. Well, move into member
Sorry, Rob, I
input.
didn't mean to steal your thunder.
No, that's fine.
He's gracious to share the good news. Go ahead. I will start on this side.
No, not much. We meet again on the
24th.
the 24th. We've done the walkthroughs. Just mostly it's been budget stuff. Nothing fancy.
Okay.
You know it all now.
I appreciate the opportunity that the board has provided to people to see the facilities. It's nice to be able to put a look of a building with a
And
number.
all the departments, they've done real good. They've done well.
A moment you've been waiting for.
Thank you very much.
All right. This is in regards to Andrew's letter that was sent to me last week. A couple things here. First of all, you involved the Board of Selectmen. They have nothing to do with me. So when you want to send your letter, you want to send it to her, fine, send it to her. Sending it to the Board of Selectmen when I'm not on the board. And then when it comes to social media, I didn't sign anything about anything. So what I feel like saying, I'm going to say. When I leave this room, I'm my own person. I'm not a budget committee member. I'm at my house. And then another part of your letter said you were disturbed by my inability to be objective with a teacher's contract and budgetary matters. How is that? Because I don't vote your way?
Right? And if that's the logic you're going to use, then apparently anybody who disagrees with you isn't as enlightened.
Is what? I'm sorry.
Is not as enlightened. As a member of the budget committee, that's all you are. You don't have any power over me. You're not my boss. So involving me in that letter was, I don't really know what the point is unless you're trying to publicly shame me or something like that. If you don't like my post, scroll.
I'm sorry?
And if you don't like my post, scroll on. It wasn't meant to you. I didn't say it to you. And last part is, again, what I already said. I didn't break any rules. I don't owe you or anybody else or any kind of explanation to what I do when I'm at my house. If you don't like it, like I said, scroll on. You don't need to send letters and try to publicly shame me. That's all I got.
Thank you for your input. Mr. Myers? You have anything? No? I'll move to this side. All right. So,
Whoa.
I started over here.
Well, I'm sorry. I didn't. You guys say no?
I'm moving this way. Okay.
So I'm going to respond.
Absolutely.
Right? So, calling me a coward at last week's meeting is ridiculous, right? I was at another commitment, right, that I had every right to be. My communication was to the chair in the appropriate format through a letter, right? That is the appropriate way for a budget committee member to express concern to our chair.
You couldn't have waited till the next
Excuse me,
meeting.
I am talking.
Settle down.
When I talk,
Did I raise my voice to you?
I will demand respect from you. When you
Settle
talk,
down.
I respected you.
Take it down a little bit.
Excuse me.
All right.
I have the
Take it
right
down.
to
You
talk.
don't need to, you don't
Okay.
need to yell.
All right. Listen.
The fact that you cyberbully online and that you are on this committee is ridiculous and it's shameful.
See, wait.
Hey,
Personal
hey.
attack. So if I
No.
can't do it, neither can he.
Excuse me. Did you allow me the opportunity to?
Well,
Would you?
I
would you like-
gave you the respect to talk.
All right. Listen. Let's please avoid personal attacks and focus on actions. Your original letter focused on actions. So let's please maintain that.
So the actions are, right, I have real concerns about Mr. Hodgkin's objectivity on this board, right? He sits here, he does not speak, period. What we talked about at the last meeting when we were talking about call to action, I forget the date of the meeting.
Yep.
Right? What we were talking about is a piece of paper, right? Let's put together a plan. It was in no shape or form talking about let's, get the town to fund all this money for all these capital improvements. Your message was false, flat out false, right? So if you're going to go to social media and you're going to post, do it accurately, right? But also
Believe
do
I was
it.
accurate.
Excuse me, I am talking,
Okay.
You don't need to yell.
right? You're being incredibly rude.
So
I gave you the respect to say what you needed to say. Let me say what I need to say. Are we clear?
Oh, Crystal.
Good. If you can't remain objective on this board, you have no right to be on this board, right? There's nothing I can do about it. You're absolutely clear. You have the freedom of speech, no doubt about it. And thank you for your service, by the way, right? I truly mean that.
Yeah, sure.
I do, right? Wholeheartedly. However, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Freedom of speech is one thing, right? You are on a board to represent the town of Litchfield, the people of Litchfield, right? What you are doing through your votes, of course, from what I've seen, is representing your own personal interests. You're not representing the town. And that to me is a problem. So while I can't, have you removed from the committee, there are other options that we can certainly look into. So it's up to you. What I ask you to do on this committee is to be fair, to keep an open mind. If you have something to say about the concerns of costs, say it. That's why we're here. That's why you're elected. That's it.
is there a respectful rebuttal, or we're going to fisticuffs in the parking lot?
Whether you don't like my votes.
Okay, so yes, we have a disagreement. I would suggest that you both sit on opposite ends of the tables for the remainder of the season. It has also been suggested to me that we consider, once everything dies down, an update to the bylaws that would encourage and require people to identify them as posting as private citizens and not as members of the budget committee. I would, however, hold off on that until things die down and we can do it in a more calm and objective manner, and so that it doesn't appear to be reactive and emotionally charged. So perhaps it's something we take up at the next session, because everybody signed on to this year's bylaws, but something to consider moving forward. But there's nothing, there are going to be disagreements. I personally welcome respectful and engaging discussion. And I would encourage people who are interested to discuss and express their views. We cannot respond and our views cannot be challenged and made better if people are not participating. So I would encourage you to bring those to the table so we can respond and adjust. And that's all I have to say there. Like we're not gonna agree on everything, and that's fine. But I would ask that we speak in a respectful tone, regardless of whether you feel you're a member or people see you as a member of the budget committee. People are watching. So we ask our kids to play nice on the ball, on and off the ball field. So let's play nice in and out of this room. Okay. You don't have to like each other. You don't have to agree with each other. But let's not call each other names. Let's set an example. Hold ourselves to a higher standard. Okay. So anybody else have any other public member input before I go to the public?
So I'm not going to be here on the 24th, but I
That's
would
right.
like to participate.
That's right, the tours.
Oh, yes. Go.
And I'm not going to be here for that. So
Okay, so the superintendent thought that during the day would be really good because you get to see it with the kids in there, see it, how crowded it might be in one school or not crowded in another, whatever. He is very willing to, any members that can't make the day, he is willing to take those members on a night.
Excellent. Because that was going to be my next question, because about half of us can make it and half of us can't. And
He
I
said he would be willing to do that.
excellent. I appreciate that very much so. And then we'll reach out, because do you have the schedule of the tours because we're going to invite our wonderful Litchfield
Well, what I
Cable
wanted to
TV.
do was talk to you about that
Okay.
first and see what time you wanted to start.
After 8:30.
Anytime after 8:30.
For me, I don't know. I can discuss that with the other people here. I would prefer after 8:30 and done by 1:45, so I can make my
Oh, I
pickups.
think we're gonna do it within 3 hours plus a little transition.
Perfect.
time.
That-
An hour of school, we figure.
I just need to be able to make drop off at GMS and pick up at LMS, and other than that, I'm good.
Might even be lucky enough to get to see the lunches.
Excellent. So long as you guys are available.
So he'll be back Wednesday.
Mhm.
And I will start to make the schedule
Appreciate
and
it.
go over it with him as soon as he gets back, and then I'll get it to you.
Excellent. And then we will contact you guys.
Oh, it's not even that. It's just, I get hoarse as the night goes on. And the principals will also be there, and they'll be leading. They'll do an overview in the lobby first, and then they'll lead you to the tour.
Excellent. And then we'll extend an invitation
And then
to.
we'll figure out what night is good for everybody.
Perfect.
At least we've got a little time, so.
Yep. Excellent. So anything else that needs
If
to
you
be?
could send me a list of the people who can make the days.
Yes.
And who can't, so
Sure.
we can coordinate both of them.
Absolutely. List of days versus night. All right. Any other member input? All right.
So I just need to know who to call or how to get. I want to do that on the 24th. I'm requesting that as per our bylaws.
Okay. So I have to figure out how to do
So
that.
you need to be for attendance the whole meeting.
Yes.
just so
Yeah.
you're-
And I will. I can make that.
We have our IT person here. How do we make that happen?
So I'll be out of state on the 24th.
The phone's right there, you just gotta call her.
Okay.
Conference.
All right, so
And
Can
keep
you
me-
be here for the 24th to help me set that up?
Sorry, I'll be far.
That's
Will you
not
really?
hard. All we
Again.
need is a number where to call you.
All
All right. Tell you what. I'll get in contact with you and you can walk me through the process.
Yeah, pretty sure.
Just call me.
Yeah.
Just
Make
provide
notes.
us a number that you want us
Yeah.
to call you on, and then you'll be on speaker.
Perfect.
And I'll make sure the phone number.
And we'll put a mic near there so people can hear her. And she may not project as loudly as I do.
It's really actually really easy.
No.
Perfect. All right.
Thanks. Awesome. Thank you.
Excellent. So we'll get that squared away. Excellent. Member input. We have people here.
public input.
Public input. You're right. It's long night, long week. Public input. You're about the only one who hasn't spoken, no? All right. Excellent. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So
Second.
first and second. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? And those who abstain. Excellent. We will see you on October 24th, and we hope to see a lot of our department heads here too. Thank you.
That's your-